Before becoming the strongest in the world, you had a dream. In the dream, you failed the tribulation in front of everyone, and your wife of half a month decisively broke up with you, leaving only a 6-month-old daughter. From then on, you and your daughter depended on each other. Later, you painstakingly taught her for decades, even sacrificing all your wealth to exchange for a peerless divine sword for your daughter. But after she became famous, she publicly declared you as a ruthless and ungrateful demon, joining forces with dozens of strong individuals to push you to a dead end, and even pierced your chest with that divine sword. This scene startled you awake. Unexpectedly, when you looked up, your daughter disdainfully scolded you. "Why are you sitting here? I didn't practice cultivation this afternoon and went out to play, and now you want to lecture me again?" You looked at Ning Huanhuan without saying a word. If you remember correctly, you would hand over the divine sword you exchanged with all your wealth to her at this moment. However, she not only showed no gratitude but took it for granted, taking the sword and giving it to a young man surnamed Su. This young man surnamed Su actually only saw her as a tool to exploit you and had no feelings for her. Before you could speak, Ning Huanhuan continued with a look of annoyance. "Can you stop controlling me every day? Just because you failed the tribulation and have no hope in cultivation, you can't put all your hopes and pressure on me." Putting hopes and pressure on her? You smiled faintly. In this world where the strong are respected, various forces are currently hesitant to act due to fear of your previous identity and strength. But once these forces realize you have become useless in the future, they will come from all directions to devour you without leaving a bone behind. And what if Ning Huanhuan doesn't have the strength? Rely on her mother who abandoned her at the door and never cared about her life or death? "You're right. I won't force you to practice anymore in the future," you said with a smile. Ning Huanhuan's eyes lit up after hearing this, but then she looked suspicious. You nodded with a smile. "Not only that, from now on, you can do whatever you want. I won't interfere with you anymore. If you want to do something, go ahead. I'll set you free." Hearing this, Ning Huanhuan's mouth couldn't help but curve upwards. "I don't want to practice swordsmanship recently. I feel like it's not suitable for me." You remained expressionless. "Of course, there's nothing special about practicing swordsmanship. Just play around. That's more suitable for you now." Ning Huanhuan frowned at this and felt something was off. "So you won't stop me from being with Master Su anymore, right?" You still smiled and nodded. "Of course not. At your age, you shouldn't think about other things. You should bravely let go and love. Pursue what you desire in your heart, so you won't regret your youth in the future." Hearing this, Ning Huanhuan was overjoyed and happily returned to her sleeping quarters in the Taoist temple. After Ning Huanhuan left, the smile on your face slowly faded. Whether it's a daughter or a woman, in all relationships, only by loving oneself first can others love you. You sighed, shook your head, and then closed your eyes to begin the long-lost practice. The so-called foundation damage is like a crack in the dam of a large lake. No matter how you cultivate, your cultivation will leak out like water from that crack in the lake. Now what you need to do is increase the absorption of external spiritual energy. As long as the speed of absorbing spiritual energy remains higher than the speed at which cultivation leaks out, you can maintain your cultivation level and even make gradual progress. I want to condense the seed of the 5 elements Grand Tao, so I need to first absorb the power of the 5 elements to make the 5 elements complete. The wood chi at the Qinghan Taoist temple is quite rich, so I can try to perfect the path of wood first. Your eyes flashed, and then the primordial true scripture instantly operated within your body. In an instant, invisible green chi from all directions within 100 miles rushed towards you. At this moment, your eyes suddenly opened, and a brilliant green light flashed from the depths of your pupils. Sensing the cultivation in your body at the peak of the transparent 9 layers, you exhaled a breath of impurity. A night of cultivation not only completely stabilized the cultivation that was originally declining but also advanced further, reaching the realm of the peak of the transparent 9 layers, just one step away from the void transformation. It's just a pity. If my foundation of the Grand Tao hadn't been damaged, at least I could have returned to the void transformation realm. You shook your head regretfully. Never mind. The green aura of the wood in this mountain has been absorbed by me. Let's take a break for now. You got up and walked out of the main hall while pondering. Outside the main hall, there were already several figures, packing up their belongings as if they were about to move. You looked at the 3 of them, feeling a bit emotional. The middle-aged man sitting in the wheelchair is called Master Yumming, your senior brother in the Taoist temple. The burly man is your junior brother Yuchen, and the 7 or 8-year-old child is a young Taoist in the temple. In your memory, these 2 senior brothers and the young Taoist have always been very kind to you. Junior brother, our luggage is all packed. Shall we move now? Master Yumming asked with a smile. A hint of helplessness flashed in your eyes. In order for Ning Huanhuan to have a handy magic weapon, you sold the Qinghan Taoist temple to the Tianji Tower, causing all the senior brothers in the temple to move out with you and live in a thatched house in the mountains. This behavior is suffocating. Senior brother. We're not moving. The Taoist temple is home to all of us. You smiled at Master Yumming. Not moving? What about Huanhuan's magic weapon? Master Yumming was taken aback, then quickly waved his hand and said, Junior brother, don't worry about us. We are all hopeless people with no future. Huanhuan is different. She is the future of the Qinghan Taoist temple. The future of Qinghan Taoist temple? Ning Chuan shook his head and didn't say anything more, only saying faintly, sons and daughters have their own blessings, and she doesn't care about everything I give her anyway, so since that's the case, let her be. Hearing this, realist Yu Ming could not help but open his mouth and let out a long sigh. As for the stout man, Yu Chun Jinran, he brightened up and said excitedly, Elder brother, you finally figured it out, ah? If you ask me, this girl Huanhuan is indeed a bit too stubborn, so we can't just go along with her nature. You see, she combed and dressed early in the morning and ran out again. Humph, I see that she now sees that Mr. Su is more important than you. Yu Chun. Realist Yu Ming glared angrily at realist Yu Chun. In itself, senior brother sold all the valuable magic treasures he had on hand for her, just so she could have a good foundation building. My heart aches even looking at it. And the result? That girl instead thinks that it's senior brother's climbing heart that's pressurizing her. Realist Yu Chun said unconvincingly. The two of them argued endlessly, and realist Yu Ming raised the walking stick in his hand, about to beat this headstrong third senior brother to death. Although the Yu Chun real person did not dare to fight back, his mouth did not show any weakness. The little Taoist boy who had been picked up by Ning Chuan since his childhood and regarded the Taoist temple as his own home was much simpler in mind, and when he heard that the Taoist temple was not for sale, he immediately cheered and jumped for joy. Senior brother, speaking of which, we haven't had that bite of braised pork in a long time since Master left, right? Let's try making one today? Ning Chuan suddenly proposed, interrupting the bickering between realist Yu Ming and realist Yu Chun. Huh, that's a good idea. I'll go to town and buy meat. Realist Yu Chun's eyes lit up and he hurriedly ran towards the bottom of the mountain. Yeah, let's eat roast pork. I'll go cook the vegetables and build a fire. The little Taoist boy's eyes smiled into the shape of a crescent moon as he cheerfully went to gather firewood. That's fine, then I'll show off my skills today and let you all taste my craftsmanship that is straight after my master's. True Master Yu Ming propped up his crutches and laughed cheerfully as he sat up from his wheelchair. Looking at this scene, Ning Chuan couldn't help but smile. Take a look. Obviously there are such good people right next to you. But that dead brain of his predecessor had to spend all his thoughts on that Ning Huanhuan. No wonder he ended up with a bad reputation and a miserable old age. In the meantime, inside the city of Gusu, Ning Huanhuan, who had deliberately groomed herself today, was walking with a rather handsome young gentleman on the dry road beside the riverbank. Mr. Su, can you stop talking about that invalid every time you come out with me? Are you dating me or that invalid father of mine? I don't want to talk about anything about him. Ning Huanhuan's face floated with dissatisfaction. Miss Ning is right. By the way, that wastrel, has he taught you any more cultivation methods recently? Su Tunan laughed dryly, then asked with a flash of his eyes. You again? Ning Huanhuan glared at the young male, then said smugly, I have good news for you, that wastrel is finally willing to set me free. From now on, I can stop cultivating if I want to, and I can come out to play with you if I want to. He won't care about me anymore. This statement was made. What? Su Tunan, who was originally beside her with a refined smile on his face, heard these words, but his face instantly froze. He doesn't care about you anymore? How does that work? What about the sword? Didn't he give it to you? In the heat of the moment, Su Tunan subconsciously stretched out his hands and grabbed Ning Huanhuan's shoulders in a death grip, his gaze fixed firmly on her. You're hurting me! Ning Huanhuan cried out in pain. When Su Tunan heard this, he immediately withdrew his hand as if it was lightning, and a look of guilt quickly surfaced on his face as he repeatedly apologized. Only then did Ning Huanhuan's face ease up, frowning. What sword did you just say? Don't you know? That dad of yours, Scrappy, intends to sell the Qinghan Taoist temple and go to the Tianji building to exchange for a magic treasure for you to use as a weapon. Su Tunan returned. Oh, I don't see any swords. How much can that broken Taoist temple be worth? What kind of good magic treasure could it be exchanged for? Ning Huanhuan said in disbelief. Su Tunan didn't say anything more when he heard this, but instead lowered his head and continued to follow Ning Huanhuan along the riverbank, thoughts constantly flashing in his eyes. Ning Huanhuan, on the other hand, was holding his hand and was chatting freely about their bright future. Huanhuan, tonight is my crown banquet. You remember to come and participate. Without you, this crown banquet of mine would be meaningless. Suddenly, Su Tunan spoke softly. But you know, my father has always been not very agreeable to us together. Think that we are not the right family, this time, and the crown banquet. There will be other family women to our Su family marriage. But as long as you can send me a gift at the crown banquet that overpowers those people, it will let my father know that you have a background and strength. That way my father will agree to us being together. Ning Huanhuan sniffed blankly, but I don't have anything to show for it? Su Tunan gave her a deep look, then took a deep breath and slowly spat out a sentence that said, you don't have it, but that wastrel father of yours does. If you make him hand over the mixed element true scripture, my clan, it will definitely agree to us being together. Really? I'm on my way. Hearing these words, Ning Huanhuan instantly smiled with joy and hurriedly headed towards the Qingshan Taoist temple. Su Tunan looked at Ning Huanhuan's departing back, and on his face, which was originally wearing a gentle smile, the smile slowly converged, and the light in his eyes continuously flickered up. A mere yellow-haired girl wants to fly up the branch to become a phoenix and marry into the Su family? Heh, if it wasn't for the fact that Ning Chuan was her father, he wouldn't even bother to say more than a single word to her. When this woman will be his father's body, all the things to squeeze dry erase, I think it will be enough to make my Su family, at least a higher level, right? TSK, what a pity, to think that Ning Chuan once pressed across an era, astonishingly talented and heavenly, carrying 100 years of law and carrying the Tao of 10,000 worlds on his shoulders. But in the end, for the sake of his daughter, he ended up in this state. Su Tunan shook his head and left with his hands in the air. Chapter 4. What I give you is yours. If I don't give it to you, you can't have it. Hey, I'm going to the Su family's banquet tonight and I'm missing a gift. You prepare it for me. In the evening, Ning Chuan and a group of masters and brothers from the Taoist temple were having dinner when Ning Huanhuan approached with great strides and said in a commanding manner. Ning Chuan glanced at her, then spat out 2 words, no. Ning Huanhuan immediately raised her eyebrows and said, why don't you give it? When other people go to banquets, they all bring gifts prepared by their families. Why are you different? You just want me to go and be humiliated? Ning Chuan picked up his teacup and took a light sip of tea, asking rhetorically, did you prepare a gift for me on my birthday last month? Ning Huanhuan was instantly stagnant for the words, then annoyed and angry cursed, good, you still say you raised me not to ask for a return, I just don't prepare a gift for you, and you hold a grudge until now? You this selfish and self-serving. Not waiting for her to finish a sentence of cursing. Snap. A harsh slap was slapped through the air. Then, a bright red slap mark violently appeared on her face. Ning Chuan shook his hand with a calm demeanor and spoke faintly, what I give you is what you get. What I don't give you, you can't have. Understand? Ning Huanhuan's brain went blank, her head buzzing, covering her face as she stared blankly at Ning Chuan. Strange. The expressionless person in front of her clearly looked exactly like Ning Chuan, yet she felt a strangeness that she had never felt before. The coldness in those eyes sent chills down her spine, and there was no longer any semblance of closeness. You hit me? Ning Huanhuan clenched her lower lip as tears came out of her eyes like pearls that had fallen off a string. What started out as a choked sob instantly morphed into a bawl. You selfish, bad man. You took away my mother and wouldn't let her visit me. And now you beat me. Why? Why wasn't it mother who took me away in the first place? I'm going to find mother. I'm going to tell her just how much you mistreated me. I'm going to get mother, to bring someone to clean you up. Ning Huanhuan cried as she rushed towards the outside of the Qingshan Taoist temple. Ning Chuan looked at Ning Huanhuan's pearly back without any feeling in his heart. The deadbeat from his previous life would have spoiled her, he wouldn't. Huanhuan. Realist Yu Ming's face was anxious and he was about to get up to pull. Senior. Ning Chuan frowned. Realist Yu Ming looked at Ning Huanhuan, who had disappeared into the night in the blink of an eye, and then looked back at Ning Chuan, whose face was neither happy nor sad, and finally opened his mouth and let out a long sigh. Senior brother, this girl Huanhuan is still young and doesn't know any better. What are you bothering with her for? Ning Chuan sniffed and picked up his teacup, sipped his tea with downcast eyes, and casually said, being young and having a conscience are 2 different things. After a pause, Ning Chuan looked down at the little Taoist boy whose face was covered in pitch black soot from burning the fire, reached out and pinched his face and laughed. Little Yufu, Master Goddess will teach you the method of cultivation, okay? The little Taoist boy called Yufu, giggled and nodded his head as he naively said, yes, Master Guanmu can teach me anything. Aha! Ning Chuan nodded and looked towards the gradually darkening night outside the Great Hall. Senior brother, have you never told Huanhuan that it was her mother who disliked her as a burden and took the initiative to not want her? After a slight silence, the Yuchun realist at the side spoke in a low voice. Ning Chuan didn't reply, but said indifferently, what's the point of talking to her about this? If she wants to go to her mother, let her go. In the meantime, a white phoenix carriage pulled by a water qilin was pressing across the void, rapidly approaching towards the direction of Gusa City. At the back of the phoenix carriage, there were 4 golden-armored giants carrying a large flag, which was hunting, with 4 big words written on it in dragon and phoenix flight, De Luo Divine Sect. Every step they took was like an earth dragon turning over, causing the earth to tremble. And in front, there was even a group of divine journey powerhouses opening the way. They came all the way here in a vast and majestic manner, pressing down on the 4 poles of heaven and earth, and wherever they passed, countless people were frightened by them. This is the phoenix frame of the Great Luo Divine Sect. Hiss dash. The Great Luo Divine Sect's people are here. That one sitting in the carriage seems to be Goddess Tantai Qinghan. What is the Great Luo Divine Sect doing in our cloud state if they aren't staying in the central state? In an instant, within Gusu City, countless cultivators all tilted their heads to look in surprise, their eyes vibrating. The city was full of sensations. There was no outcry. Next moment, One could only see this phoenix carriage, directly crossing over Gusa City, heading towards the Qingxian Taoist temple outside of Gusa City. On a mountain road leading from Qingxian Taoist temple to Gusa City, Ning Huanhuan covered her face, her eyes foggy, and that face, which was usually quite beautiful, was permeated with a hatred that had never been seen before. He hit me. He hit me. I'm going to find my mother and join the great Luo Dao land. Let him regret it when the time comes, but even if he regrets it I won't bother with him. Ning Huanhuan clenched her teeth, already imagining in her mind's eye Ning Chuan begging her to take her in after she was old, and her being cold and unfeeling, spitting out the words, "Do you regret it? This is all thanks to that slap you gave me back then." The scene. Rumble dash. Just then, violent explosions came from the sky and the earth began to tremble. Ning Huanhuan raised her head to look, only to see a phoenix carriage made of white jade, being pulled by an Incan jade Qilin, rapidly approaching from the sky. Behind it, there were also 4 golden-armored giants carrying large flags with 4 big words written on the surface of the flags in dragons and phoenixes, the Luo Divine Sect. The Great Luo Divine Sect? Mother! In a flash, Ning Huanhuan first froze, then waved her hand and shouted. She had long remembered the flags of the Great Luo Divine Sect and her mother's carriage. Next moment, only to see that the phoenix carriage stop in the middle of the high sky, a golden-armored giant bending down and spreading out his large hands in front of Ning Huanhuan. Without hesitation, Ning Huanhuan jumped onto the golden-armored giant's palm, and as the golden-armored giant rose up, Ning Huanhuan only felt a flash before her eyes, and the sound of violent whistling wind came from her ears. When she opened her eyes again, she was already standing in front of the phoenix carriage. Cheerful. Behind the curtain winds of the phoenix carriage, an indifferent female voice came. Mother! Ning Huanhuan's face flushed with joy, and she hurriedly pushed aside the curtain wind and drilled in. Only to see a woman wearing a haze crown, clad in a phoenix cloak, with vermilion lips coated in rouge, born with a pair of ghostly eyes, with an absolutely beautiful appearance to the extreme, and with an extremely cold and noble temperament, was sitting in the phoenix carriage. Mother! You're finally here! Ning Huanhuan could no longer control herself and fell headfirst into Tantai Qinghan's arms, loudly starting to cry out all her grievances. Looking at the young girl who was crying in her arms and had a few similarities with her own appearance, the brightly colored Tantai Qinghan frowned slightly and subconsciously wanted to reach out and push away. After thinking about it, she still turned to push into a pat, gently patting Ning Huanhuan's back, and on an extremely uncomfortable face, she put up a smile that she thought was kind and said, "It's okay, no one can bully you when mother is here." Next moment, the phoenix carriage traveled forward once again and finally stopped at the foot of the Qingxian Taoist temple. "You guys wait here for me." Tantai Qinghan turned towards the group of accompanying servants and faintly commanded. Next moment, Tantai Qinghan held Ning Huanhuan's hand, stepped onto the stone steps, took a deep breath, and lifted his steps towards the Qingxian Taoist temple. Chapter 5 Tantai Qinghan. Ha ha ha, keep playing, and keep dancing. Senior brother. I really didn't drink too much, you believe me. Back then, the master accepted our master and disciple 3, I originally thought that I would be the most promising one, the results did not expect your kid without saying a word to leap to my front, when I reacted to the time, yo-oh, good guy. You are the crown of the contemporary, become the world's heavenly pride list first. At that time, I was really greedy looking at senior brother, too greedy. Who says it isn't? Just think of how spirited senior brother Guan Master was when he was the first of the younger generation in the Zhang Yuan realm. The people who came to our Qingxian Taoist temple every day to pay homage to the master and seek the way could line up all the way to the head of Gusa City. As a result, after the failure of senior brother's tribulation and the breakage of the foundation of the great Tao, these people were afraid of being implicated in the liquidation and all of them ran away. As the saying goes, when people leave, the tea is cold. This person has not even left yet, how come the tea table has been lifted? Senior brother do not have to be sentimental, people go tea cool tacit withdrawal, this is the rules of the Jianghu. This life is. This is the human feelings like paper zhang thin, world affairs such as chess bureau new. It's good to be gone. Gone clean. Senior uncle and master goddess, I didn't leave. It's still good to have little Yufu. Tantai Qinghan stood outside the Taoist temple and smelled a pungent odor of alcohol coming from the hall before she even stepped into it, causing her to frown. Oh shitty, look, I'm a lame butterfly. Woohoo, I'm going to fly. Ow ow ow. Then I'm an earthworm, watch me twist and twist, do I twist well? And when she approached inside the hall, she only saw that inside the bare hall, the Yuming and Yuchun real people, who were limping on one foot, were drinking and singing and dancing, and they were red-faced. One is fantasizing about being a drunken butterfly, flying limply through the sky. Another fantasized that he was an earthworm, writhing around on the ground. Little Yufu was bitter and kept gathering the bottles on the floor. Ning Chuan, on the other hand, had one hand propped up on his chin, and, with a lost smile, looked at the singing and dancing senior brothers and sisters. Haven't seen you for 10 years, have you been reduced to this? It's really wasted. An icy cold word was spat out, instantly causing the temperature of the entire hall to drop to freezing point. Who? Realist Yu Ming and Realist Yu Chun, who were originally dancing, looked back and first froze, their mouths opening wide in dumbfounded disbelief. Then reacting violently, all the alcohol instantly dissipated, and his face turned red. Swish! One quickly sat back in his wheelchair, clenching his fists and coughing constantly, while the other snapped and stood as straight as a benchmark. Yuchin! As Realist Yu Ming merely spat out 2 words, Realist Yu Chun instantly grabbed little Yu Fu with one hand and pushed up the wheelchair with the other and rushed towards the outside of the hall. Shame on you! Slipped and slipped. The great hall, which was previously noisy, became quiet. Will the heavenly pride that once crowned the current generation and overwhelmed the great world now spend his days hiding in this Taoist temple, drinking and getting drunk, and avoiding reality? Tantai Qinghan looked towards Ning Chuan and couldn't help but gently shake her head, a flash of disappointment in her eyes. Mother! It's this invalid who beat me today. He also forces me to cultivate every day and forbids me to meet the person I like. Ning Huanhuan burst into tears, accusing Tantai Qinghan of Ning Chuan's crimes. Alright, Huanhuan, let you suffer. This is a gift I specially prepared for you. Take a look at this magic treasure. Do you like it? Tantai Qinghan rubbed Ning Huanhuan's head, and with a flip of his right hand, a red damask inlaid with 7 precious pearls appeared in his hand. Ning Huanhuan exclaimed, "Wow, it's so pretty. Thank you, mother is the best." Well, you go out, I'll talk to him alone, Tantai Qinghan said with a smile. Ning Huanhuan instantly glared fiercely at Ning Chuan. Look at mother, then look at you. I really don't know how, back then, mother looked at you. After saying that, Ning Huanhuan left with a cheerful face. A special gift? An unimpressive magic treasure used by Tantai Qinghan's maidservant was all that was needed to deceive and trick this stupid girl. Ning Chuan lost his smile and shook his head. There was no anger or sarcasm, not even one more word. There were just a few moments of feeling amused. This was Tantai Qinghan's usual tactic, to give others small favors, and then make a point of flaunting his sincerity and how good he was to the other party, striving to make every dollar carry 100 times its weight, coaxing the other party into gratitude. It was just that he didn't think that she would use such petty tactics on her own daughter. What brings you here? Ning Chuan retrieved his thoughts and looked at Tantai Qinghan. Passing through. Going out for a walk together? There's something I want to talk to you about on this visit, by the way. Tantai Qinghan spoke. No need. Just say it here. Ning Chuan picked up his teacup and blew on the tea with his eyes downcast. Tantai Qinghan hesitated for a moment and then said, fine. Taking a deep breath, Tantai Qinghan directly opened the door. The great Luo divine sect is prepared to allow me to marry that young lord of the Taishu Dao land, and when the time comes, the two parties will work together to help me cross the half-saint tribulation. The words fell. Tantai Qinghan just stared straight at Ning Chuan, trying to find something she wanted from Ning Chuan's subtle expression. Oh, that's really congratulations, double happiness. Ning Chuan sipped his tea and said, is that your reaction? Tantai Qinghan frowned. Or else. Ning Chuan raised an eyebrow, somewhat dumbfounded in his heart. The two of them have been separated for 10 years, it's hard not to want him to show how much of a heartbroken look he has. The predecessor might, but he never would. If he remembered correctly, based on later plot developments, Tantai Qinghan had also come to him at this time, similarly giving Ning Huanhuan that piece of 7 treasures red damask and also giving Ning Chuan those words. Nothing about the plot has changed. The only thing that has become is that after Ning Chuan's cultivation plummeted in his previous life and his state of mind was damaged, he, who was originally self-absorbed and disillusioned, became even more disheveled and low, and the whole person was irritable at times and moaned at times. This is Ning Chuan now scrutinized seems, this is actually the predecessor failure of the biggest weakness of the broken. Talent is too strong, resulting in too smooth all the way to go, a debut as the flowers, God's favorites, as if the heart is his privilege. This results in self-loathing and disillusionment after a blow. It would be strange if such a state of mind could achieve a half-sane powerhouse. And in this life, although the plot is all the same, the soul in Ning Chuan's shell has long since not been the same person. Ning Chuan. Suddenly, Tantai Qinghan's brow furrowed even tighter as she said, I was once your Taoist partner. You can't bear to see me go and marry someone else? Can't you show me a little bit of upward mobility? The injury to the foundation of the great Tao cannot be healed, but it can be suppressed. You only need to beg my father, willing to serve my great Luo divine sect, and my father will help you, suppressing this great Tao root injury. If you don't want to marry, who else can put a knife to your neck and force you to marry? Can't you learn from young Sanian, who swore to die, and was not afraid of breaking her bones in order to preserve her innocence on earth? If you are not chaste enough, why do you talk as if I am the one who caused you to marry? Ning Chuan asked rhetorically. Still fishing like I'm a warbler? This is the kind of cheap PUA tactic that only a predecessor would be stupid enough to get emotionally involved over. Tantai Qinghan immediately for the language stagnation, this guy has always been poorly spoken, when so able to argue will argue? Forget it. Tantai Qinghan let out a long breath. Originally there were still 1,000 words he wanted to say, but as a result, now he could not say a single word. She turned and headed out the door. I'm passing through here to head to the Feathered Immortal sect, which has recently enthroned a Dao Seed Divine Son, and it's no other than your third disciple, Luo Changzong. The several disciples you accepted back then, after leaving you now all have their own achievements, some of them have a great reputation in the Zhangxuan world, some have become a sect of God's Son, some are competing on the Heaven's Pride list, some are trying their swords in the world without a single defeat, and the one who invested in the Devil's Way has already reached the realm of Jinwu's 5 robberies. Look at the husband and wife a situation hurt. I kindly remind you of a sentence, although your cultivation is abolished, but your learning is still there, a lot of forces coveted your kung fu aptitude, you can avoid the best to avoid, otherwise it is the disaster of extinction. After saying that, Tantai Qinghan left. Under the full moon, a phoenix carriage crossed the sky and disappeared at the end of the long night. Ning Chuan shook his head, not caring too much. This former Taoist partner of his predecessor, Tantai Qinghan, had always been an extremely lucid person with a rather clear purpose for what he wanted. When Ning Chuan was in the ascendant, she could have given up everything, attached herself to him, given birth to a daughter for him, and lived the life of a husband and mother. Later, when Ning Chuan failed to cross the tribulation and was reduced to a wasted body overnight, she was able to pull away again without hesitation and without a trace of procrastination. In simpler terms, this is a refined egoist. Tonight, I should be able to break through the void transformation realm, right? Taking in a deep breath, Ning Chuan's feet stepped, and his figure instantly shot up into the sky, landing on a hilltop. What love affairs and children's love, that's something that the predecessor goes to think about. He just wants a career. Under the full moon, on top of the mountain, a white-shirt figure sat cross-legged, slowly closing his eyes. A fresh breeze blew up Ning Chuan's full head of black hair and the corners of his white shirt. Next moment, boom dash. For 100 miles around, the mountains trembled. Countless ethereal wood green chi was like beacon fire and wolf smoke, rising up to the sky. Chapter 6 Breaking Through the Transformation Void. True Martial Emperor Body. Boom dash. If a supreme powerhouse were to look down from above at this moment, they would realize that the entire Qingming mountain seemed to have been transformed into a large swirling net. Ning Chuan, on the other hand, was the eye of the wind located in the center of the vortex. Countless amounts of ethereal wood green chi surged towards Ning Chuan in a vast manner. The cultivation level that had slightly slipped because of a white day suddenly began to skyrocket once again. In just a quarter of an hour, the cultivation level that had slipped during the day due to the damage to the foundation of the Great Tao was suddenly replenished. Then, his cultivation then began to surge upward at a rate that could be described as astonishing. At the 3rd hour, the lights of the entire Gusa city at the foot of Qingming Mountain gradually went out and turned into darkness. Above the mountain, Ning Chuan, who was practicing with his eyes closed, had a muffled bang sound come from his lower abdominal dantian. Immediately after, just like a silver bottle breaking at the first sight of water, that barrier located in the realm of void transformation was broken through. An aura belonging to the void transformation realm radiated out with Ning Chuan at the center. Ning Chuan slowly opened his eyes, the usual color of vicissitude and fatigue had all but disappeared, and his eyes were bright and clear as they had never been before. As he stepped into the void transformation realm, the outline of the great mountain, which could only be vaguely seen in the darkness of the night, suddenly became incomparably clear. In his ears, he could even hear the subtle sound of a small beast at the foot of the mountain, crushing the branches of a dead tree. Thumbs up! A wave of divine sense instantly burst forth from the depths of Ning Chuan's sea of consciousness, sweeping across the entire Qingming mountain. The ears and eyes are bright, the wisdom is clear, and its own divine consciousness is nourished. This was one of the means of the void transformation realm. The realm of transformation. A faintly heartfelt smile surfaced on Ning Chuan's face. Void transformation realm, the 4th realm among the 8 realms of cultivation. Don't look at the predecessor as early as in the early teens, it will be cultivated into this realm, but the fact, a void transformation realm cultivator, in the entire Zhongyuan realm, was already in existence like a dragon and phoenix among men. Other than that, what made Ning Chuan feel the most excited at the moment was still a pale green seed located within the Dantian Divine Sea. That is the seed of the ethereal wood avenue. It was only necessary to continue to grow this ethereal wood seed so that it would take root within the Divine Sea and grow into a heavenly tree. He would be able to reach perfection in his ethereal wood avenue. Unfortunately, Ning Chuan looked down towards the overnight withered Qingming mountains and shook his head with some regret. The so-called ethereal wood green chi is the life essence of flowers, plants, and trees. With his drastic absorption of the ethereal wood green chi tonight, the entire Qingming Mountain's ethereal wood green chi had been completely absorbed, and it would only be until the beginning of spring next year that it would be able to recover again. It seems that we have to find a new place to absorb the ethereal wood green chi. The rest of the 5 elements of power must also be put on the agenda in a hurry. A trace of pressure arose in Ning Chuan's heart. This pressure did not come from what Tantai Qinghan said today, that the rest of the forces coveted him. The predecessor, though not very smart looking a lot of the time, was not a bit of a crusher and didn't keep it to himself. He had left 2 talismans inside the Qingshan Taoist temple. In those 2 talismans were 2 of his world-defying divine abilities when he was at his peak. As long as the half-saint didn't come out, those 2 talismans were enough to exterminate any of the Zhongyuan realm's Zhenwuzhou realm powerhouses, enough to ensure that he would be free of worry in the near future. What really makes today's Ning Chuan feel the pressure? It was the injury to the root of that great Tao. As the power of the 5 elements was absorbed, the quality of the power of the 5 elements would become more and more demanding. For example, if Ning Chuan condensed the great Tao seed, only ordinary ethereal wood green qi would be enough, but if Ning Chuan wanted to make this great Tao seed take root and germinate, this ordinary ethereal wood green qi would no longer be able to be made, but would require spirit medicine, a large number of spirit medicines. Otherwise, once his cultivation slowed down, the cultivation he had managed to cultivate with great difficulty would drain away due to that great Tao root injury. The injury to the root of that great Tao was like a sharp blade hanging from his neck, urging him to go faster, faster. In this neighborhood, where is the spiritual medicine garden? A thoughtful look appeared in Ning Chuan's eyes as he gazed towards Gushu City, an idea gradually forming in his mind. At the moment, it was still early in the day, so Ning Chuan was in no hurry to leave. There are many reasons why the predecessor failed to cross the tribulation. The fact that the Tao heart is not strong enough is one point, but there is another point. Is that the physical body was too fragile. Ning Chuan couldn't help but let out a sigh as he remembered the past. The predecessor was extremely close to the Tao. It is called holding a momentary art, carrying 100 years of law on his shoulders, and carrying the way of the 10,000 worlds. However, he had neglected the cultivation of his physical body. Cultivation is like crossing the sea of bitterness, and the physical body is the treasure boat to cross the sea. Even if one's techniques are divine, if one's physical body is weak, how can one truly attain the great Tao? The failure of the predecessor's demi-sacred tribulation, now that I look back on it in detail, has long since planted the seeds of trouble. Ning Chuan shook his head, then flipped his right hand, and a black ancient book appeared above his palm. On the ancient book, there were 4 big words written, Jinwu Emperor Body. This was a flesh body technique that Ning Chuan had obtained in a secret territory when he was at the peak of Jinwu. The origin of this method has long been uninvestigable, but it is extremely powerful and is divided into 4 realms: true martial mortal body, true martial golden body, true martial dharma body, and true martial emperor body. On top of that, there were 36 scattered hands, which were top-notch martial arts aptitudes. According to the introduction of this method, once one reaches the great completion of the true martial emperor's body, not to mention any half-saint calamity, even the true saint calamity, one could cross over bare-bodied. When my predecessor obtained this method, he was already in the peak realm of the true Goten happenings, and his Yuanshan flesh body had returned to unity, so it was too late for him to want to cultivate this method. Now that I'm starting over, it's the right time to cultivate it. Ning Chuan smiled faintly. Perhaps this was called fortune and woe, and fortune. Come on. Ning Chuan closed his eyes once again, transforming his body into a hammer with the true energy in his body, and began to hammer his physical body according to the operation method of the true martial mortal body. The cultivation method of the true martial mortal body was very simple. As long as one hammered their physical body day and night to achieve invulnerability to swords and spears with the strength of their physical body without relying on their cultivation. In the meantime, Gusu City, Su family. A night of fish and dragon dance. Su family, at this moment has been the banquet guests all dispersed, turned into a cold. The Great Hall. Su family head Su Jinping sat in the main seat. Both sides in turn are the family's core personnel. Su Tunan, who was crowned today, was also on the spot. Nanner, how is your situation with that girl? Su Jinping opened his mouth and asked. Su Tunan sniffed, a touch of confidence surged on his face and said, Father, don't worry, the district is just a little girl who has not experienced the world. I just arranged a few scenes of heroes rescuing the beauty, and then gave a little favor, and a few flowery words on weekdays, and I have already charmed her into a state of ecstasy. Su Jinping nodded his head in satisfaction at his words and said, not bad. Last time, the foundation establishment method that you obtained from that little girl allowed quite a number of disciples within our family who were unable to establish their foundations to have succeeded in establishing their foundations, and they are far stronger than the rest of the disciples who practiced our family's foundation building method. You maintain more of a relationship with her, and try to get more of Ning Chuan's cultivation techniques from her. Think about it, just the foundation establishment technique taught by Ning Chuan is so powerful. If our Su family could obtain Ning Chuan's entire inheritance, how strong would it be? This statement was made. The group of core personnel in the large hall all had floating gazes and greedy faces. Dad, I just know all of this. It's just that. Su Tunan's expression became hesitant. What's wrong? Su Jinping frowned. Su Tunan clenched his teeth and said, that fellow Ning Chuan, it seems that he doesn't intend to teach that girl Ning Huanhuan anymore. What? If he doesn't teach Ning Huanhuan, then who will teach us? Su Jinping's face immediately changed. Su Tunan hurriedly said, Father, don't worry, although Ning Chuan no longer teaches that Ning Huanhuan, but I'm already beyond certain that today's Ning Chuan is a wastrel. We might as well. Speaking here, a flash of ruthlessness flashed in Su Tunan's eyes. Are you sure? Su Jinping frowned. Su Tunan nodded at his words and smiled with a confident smile. Don't worry, my child had secretly sent people forward to the Qinghan Taoist temple to feel out the bottom, but wherever one's cultivation has reached the realm of void transformation, it's impossible not to find out under the divine sense. But that Ning Chuan is not abnormal, which means That Tianjiao ranking leader who once crowned the contemporary generation, I'm afraid that he really is now a wasted man. Oh, Su Jinping immediately brightened up. After pondering for half a day, he seemed to have finally made a decision, and immediately opened his mouth towards a figure within the Great Hall. Old 5, come here. Chapter 7 Attack. The mantis catches the cicada, but the yellow sparrow is behind it. In the early morning, the golden sunlight penetrated through the clouds and spread down, giving Qingming Mountain a golden outline. Mist condensed into dew on the blades of grass as a bright green praying mantis crept forward in a slow motion, trying to hunt the black caterpillar that was wriggling in front of it. Snappy! A black tracked boot walks by, stomping the mantis and caterpillar together. Ning Chuan stretched his back and walked out of the great hall, only to see the purple haze rising. Yu Mingjinjinjin greeted the sunrise to gulp and cultivate, while Yu Chunjinjinjin was carrying a piece of green stone in his body, constantly honing his physical body and growing his strength. The little Taoist boy, Yu Fu, was holding a bamboo broom taller than him, sweeping the dead leaves all over the ground. How is it that in just one night's time, this Qingming Mountain has become depressed overnight? Realist Yu Ming muttered. Senior brother, isn't it normal for trees to wither overnight now that it's autumn? Ning Chuan smiled and spoke. Elder brother, up so early? Realist Yu Ming looked back and was stunned. What? Do I have flowers on my face? Ning Chuan chuckled. Not. Senior brother why do I feel that you have suddenly become younger? Real Yu Ming rubbed his eyes and said. The Ning Chuan in front of him clearly did not have any changes in appearance from before, but the entire person exuded a completely different aura. The previous Ning Chuan, although his appearance was equally young, the whole person was an indescribable sense of lateness, as if he was burdened with 10,000 pounds of heavy mountains, and that was a rather depressing aura. The aura is something that can't be seen or touched, yet it is real. And now, Ning Chuan whole person is full of an ethereal atmosphere, especially the usual that with the change of the world, and some vicissitudes of the cloudy eyes, at this moment it is like a mirror stained with dust, was wiped off the dust, actually became like a young man as bright and clear, like a clear spring of water. Who knows? Maybe it's because there are some things to look away from? Ning Chuan smiled and casually said. Ethereal wood green qi was the essence of life, and his change was naturally due to absorbing a large amount of ethereal wood green qi, coupled with breaking through the void transformation realm. The ancients said that phases are born from the heart, and there is still some truth in that. Real Yu Ming nodded with emotion. Where's that Huanhuan girl? Ning Chuan asked casually. Yu Mingjinren smiled bitterly and said, early in the morning, she took that 7 treasure red damask and went down the mountain to show off. Oh. Ning Chuan nodded, not caring, and turned to the little Taoist boy who was diligently sweeping the floor and laughed. Come, little Yu Fu, come here, I promised to teach you cultivation the day before. Is sweeping the floor of the small Yu Fu, suddenly carrying a broom came over, first a bright eye, and then seems to think of what, low brow and eyes look bleak said. Master Goddess, you said before. Little Yu Fu's natural talent is too poor, even if I cultivate, it's just a waste of time, I'd better sweep the floor honestly and well. Speaking here, little Yu Fu raised his head and grinned a bright smile on his small face. In fact, as long as Master Goddess doesn't drive me away and can let me serve you all the time, I'll be very satisfied. Ning Chuan couldn't help but see a flash of complexity in his eyes when he heard this. In his predecessor, he had taken on disciples based on qualifications alone, regardless of anything else. As a matter of fact, those few disciples he had once taken and did indeed shine in that Song Yuan realm nowadays with their heads in the clouds. But everyone left one by one. The one who ended up by his side was always this little Taoist boy that he had casually saved on the street on a cold winter night back then. No harm done. This unmovable King Sutra, you and take it to practice. When you can sweep this mountain full of withered leaves in a single day, then you will be considered to be initiated. Ning Chuan smiled faintly and handed Yu Fu a scripture in his hand. He was about to open his mouth to give some instructions. Ha! Abruptly, Ning Chuan seemed to have sensed something, and an essence flashed violently out of the corner of his eye. It was only seen behind the tiled eaves of the roof of one of the great halls of the Qingshan Taoist temple. A black-clothed figure was restraining his entire body's aura and hiding behind the flying eaves, drawing a finger-sized bamboo tube from his sleeve, placing it at his mouth, and aiming it at Ning Chuan. Again? Is this pressing on, ready to strike? Ning Chuan retracted his gaze without moving, letting out a cold laugh in his heart. During this recent period of time, 3 times or 2, there were always people who quietly touched into the Qingshan Taoist temple, observing his whereabouts. Originally, when Ning Chuan had not yet broken through the void transformation realm, he had not yet been able to distinguish where this group of people came from. And now that he had broken through the void transformation, he locked onto this person's identity almost instantly with his divine sense outward. Gusa Su family, 3rd level of void transformation cultivation. It should be that 5th elder of the Su family. Is the Su family prepared to make a move on me? If the Su family is going to make a move, I'm afraid I'll have to use that talisman. But if I remember correctly, there is a medicinal field within the Su clan that grows dozens of spirit medicines. The ethereal wood green qi contained in those spirit medicines should be enough for my ethereal wood seed to take root and break through to the 5th level of void transformation, right? The Su family has always been timid and thin. If I make a move at this moment, I'm afraid that it will scare them off. So it would be better to use the trick to get them to gather people, and it would be best if they pull in some more forces, and I'll exterminate them all at once, so that the proceeds can be maximized. In a flash, Ning Chuan's mind was like electricity, instantly figuring out everything. He then acted all business as usual and reached out to rub Yufu's round little head and laughed. On the path of cultivation, talent is only one thing, heart and perseverance are equally important, if you climb with heart. Phew dash. A poisonous needle, violently shot towards Ning Chuan through the air. Who? Only a shout of shock and anger could be heard, and Ning Chuan fell to the ground in response. All this change came too quickly and too suddenly. By the time the three Yuming reacted, Ning Chuan had already been hit by the needle and fallen to the ground. Shidoshi, senior brother Ning, master goddess. In an instant, all three of them turned pale and ran madly in a hurry. Shidoshi. As soon as realist Yuming held Ning Chuan in his arms, he looked at Ning Chuan, whose face had turned a pale, bloodless color, and instantly fell in a rage. Why? Why is it that my senior brother has already withdrawn from the cultivation world and doesn't ask questions? You guys still refuse to let him go? His gaze swept wildly, looking around frantically, only thinking that it was one of his enemies who had come to seek revenge. Yu Chunjinren even let out a wild roar, and his entire body rapidly swelled and grew larger, his muscles bulging high, transforming into a sturdy giant 3 feet tall. Who? Come out! Realist Yu Chun opened his mouth to growl as Ning Chuan was suddenly attacked, and he only felt a surge of anger that he had never felt before, rushing straight to the top of his head. Master Goddess. Looking at Ning Chuan, who was constantly gushing blood from his mouth, the little Taoist boy Yufu instantly broke down in tears, trembling as he stretched out his hand and continuously wiped away the blood from the corners of his mouth for Ning Chuan. Above the eaves. It's done! A flash of great joy flashed across the pale eyes of that dark shadow. Looking at the furious to the extreme Yuming realist and Yechen realist, this black shadow let out a long laugh and quickly rushed away into the sky, disappearing into the distant mountains. Wanna go? Seeing this, realist Yu Chun was instantly about to stride after him. Don't go! A weak voice called out to realist Yu Chun. With a clench of his teeth, realist Yu Chun finally stopped his pace and turned back to look at Ning Chuan, whose scarlet blood continued to gush out of his mouth. Hi, don't go after it. Ning Chuan shook his head with difficulty and said, in the meantime, Qingming Mountain on a mountain path leading to Gusa City. Ha, what heaven's pride ranking leader, the great material of cultivation that hasn't been produced for 500 years. But that's all. A black-clothed figure let out a wild laugh while reaching out and pulling the black scarf off his head, revealing a rather thin and gloomy pale face. This person was the fifth elder of the Gusa Su family, Su Jinhuan. Having fallen under the poison of my corpse compass, even if the greatest immortals descended to earth, they cannot be saved. To think that a generation of supreme powerhouses of the Jinwu 10 tribulation realm would fall into my hands. Su Jinhuan's face flushed red, and in his eyes was uncontrollable excitement and ecstasy. Ning Chuan, a 10-year-old Jinwu 10th tribulation realm powerhouse. What kind of concept is that? In the entire land of Yunzhou, there wasn't a single Jinwu Tenjak realm powerhouse. Their old ancestor of the Su family, who was close to the world, was only barely among the true Gu by virtue of the elixir back then. So far, he has not yet crossed the first of the 10 tribulations of Jinwu. Even so, it was already enough to support the Su family, which could be called a first-class power in Yunzhou and a behemoth in the entire Gusa city. This time I've made a great achievement, so Ning Chuan's mixed elements true scripture. I should be able to have a copy of it as well, right? Su Jinhuan swallowed his saliva and hurriedly swooped and flew towards the Su clan. He didn't notice. A small golden insect the size of a fingernail cap was silently drilling into the depths of his sleeve, with a sharp, refined light constantly flashing among its compound eyes. Chapter 8, You even lied to your senior brother? The night is sinking. Qingxian Taoist Temple, inside the bedchamber. Ning Chuan sat cross-legged on top of the bed, his face devoid of joy or sorrow. The little Taoist boy, Yufu, was called out to look for Ning Huanhuan and was not in the house. The Yu Chun realist had his hands in the air, constantly pacing back and forth, speaking some inaudible nonsense under his breath. Big stupid spring. What are you trying to do walking around? Shake me to death? Sitting on the wheelchair, his face gloomy to the extreme, Yu Mingjinjin violently slapped the negative hand of the wheelchair and shouted sternly. Realist Yu Chun was first stunned, then sat down with a sarcastic smile and looked at Ning Chuan. Senior brother Ning, why don't I carry you to the great Luo divine sect? I can see that Qinghan's sister-in-law still has feelings for you, so surely she wouldn't see death as a way to save you. Yunzhou is 100,000 miles away from the great Luo divine sect. You're carrying it on your back? You'll be a bone by the time you carry it. Realist Yu Ming glared at him, then pushed his wheelchair in front of Ning Chuan, his face filled with self-blame and remorse as he said, Senior brother, it's all senior brother's fault. It's because senior brother is too weak. If I was able to be stronger and able to protect you, how could something like today happen? I deserve to die. As soon as the words fell out of his mouth, realist Yu Ming couldn't help but raise his hand towards his face and slap it. Pust. Before he could get this slap on his face, his wrist was grabbed by 5 long, white, bony fingers. Real Yuming was slightly stunned and raised his head to look, only to see the front is still a bloodless, dying Ning Chuan, where there is still half a bit of injured appearance, is the corner of the mouth with a smile at him. Senior brother, you. Realist Yuming stared blankly at Ning Chuan. Next moment, only Ning Chuan blinked and pulled out a finger-long silver needle from his sleeve. You play me? Realist Yuming's eyes instantly widened like copper bells. Realist Yu Chun, who had just sat down, also let out a tang sound and stood up again, looking at Ning Chuan with his mouth wide open. Don't worry, even though my cultivation is gone, my consciousness is still there. A mere void transformation realm can't hurt me yet. Ning Chuan smiled and said, Boo! Realist Yuming hammered his fist on Ning Chuan's chest and said in irritation, Fine, it's not even enough for you to lie to others, but you even lie to senior brother me? For his part, Yu Chun Jinjin dully scratched the back of his head and asked, Senior brother, since you're fine, why are you pretending to be injured? Ning Chuan gave him a meaningful look, then looked toward the mountains already under the darkness of the night and calmly said, If I don't, how will those demons and monsters hiding in the shadows dare to come out? As soon as these words fell, Realist Yu Chun nodded with seeming understanding. Yuming real person was pondering for a while, then smiled bitterly and said, Senior brother, you also do not give us a greeting in advance, see to us scared? You foo that little guy, all cried out of shape. Ning Chuan smiled and said, True feelings are the best acting skills. Senior brother, how I feel that you recently compared to before, to chicken thief a lot more. Yuming Jinren waved his hand, then seemed to remember something and said, Then senior brother, when Huanhuan comes back, should we tell her the truth? No need. Ning Chuan shook his head, then said with a straight face, Senior brother Yuchen. In these few days, those people definitely won't dare to rush into action and will continue to observe, so the two of you should continue to act as if I don't have much time left, and don't reveal yourselves, do you understand? Realist Yu Chun immediately patted his chest and assured, Don't worry. My previous acting skills have fooled even master, so there must be no problem. And instead of speaking, the jade bright realist had his head drooped down a notch, his eyes lowered, his fists tightly clenched, and with a look of both anger and grief, he said with his long sleeves to cover his tears, My poor senior brother. Heaven envies a talented person. First, he failed to cross the threshold and his cultivation was destroyed. And now he's at the hands of a traitor. I hate it. Ahem. Senior brother, you're slightly overplaying your hand. Ning Chuan cupped his fist and coughed. Ha! I'll wrap up the act then. Realist Yuming gave a dry laugh. Well, senior brother, I'm craving some braised pork. Ning Chuan said. Okay, Yuchen and I will do it right away. After Realist Yuming and Realist Yu Chun left, Ning Chuan's face regained a calm color, and a talisman wrapped with a red rope slipped from his sleeve and landed in his palm. Once this talisman was crushed, he would be able to regain all of his cultivation within an hour, briefly returning to the power of the Jinwu 10th tribulation realm that he had at his peak. At that very moment, he'll tell the Seo family. What does it mean? Invincible. In the meantime, the Su family in Gusu. A group of core personnel of the Su family were all gathered here. Old Five, are you really sure that Ning Chuan was hit by your poison needle? Su Jinping said with a face full of excitement. Of course. Shedding his disguise, Su Jinruan, dressed in fancy clothes, stroked his beard and laughed. I watched that Ning Chuan, after being hit by my poison needles, collapsed, and his senior brothers and sisters directly cried into tears. How could it be false? On the side, Su Tunin took over and laughed. Yes, just now, when Ning Huanhuan and I were strolling around, that yellow-haired girl, that little Taoist boy from Qingshan Taoist Temple, crying all the way, came looking for him, wanting to immediately take Ning Huanhuan back. Doesn't this prove that Ning Chuan must have been seriously injured and doesn't have much time left? Well. This is the heavens having the eyes to send down a great creation to our Su family. Su Jinping let out a loud laugh. Dad, so do we do it now? Su Tunin stupidly opened his mouth. Before Ning Chuan handed over Ning Huanhuan's swordsmanship, he had only learned a few loose moves, and his strength had risen in a straight line. He didn't even dare to think about how powerful he would become if he were to kill Ning Chuan, after obtaining the entirety of that sword art from Ning Chuan's hands. Tonight? No rush. Su Jinping shook his head and said, after all, Ning Chuan was someone who had once suppressed the great world. Who knows if he is hiding a backhand? It is better to be cautious. After slightly pondering for a moment or two, Su Jinping continued to observe Ning Chuan for the next few days to see if there are any abnormal reactions. In addition, Lao San, you go to the Long River sect, the Xian Bottle sect, the Songshan sect, and the Ouyang family in Hong'an City. These several sects and families to run a trip, so that they can jointly participate in this matter, but cut close and ask them not to make any noise. Father, what's the point of telling them such a great thing? Wouldn't it be good for our Su family to have it all to ourselves? Su Tunin froze when he heard this and opened his mouth in confusion. Stupid. Su Jinping glared at Su Tunin, then grunted coldly, in today's world, how many forces covet the merit law on Ning Chuan's body? The only reason why such a thing could fall on our heads is because we are close to the water. Once Ning Chuan dies at our hands, then wouldn't we be roasted on the fire? Therefore, it is necessary to get multiple forces to participate together. In this way, we can enter with the same enemy and be united. If we retreat, we can spread out our targets and not be treated as a target of fire. Su Tunan still couldn't help but say, Father, but Ning Chuan's situation is something I managed to get out of Ning Huanhuan's mouth, so we're just going to share the benefits like this? We're at a bit too much of a disadvantage, aren't we? Su Jinping smiled at his words and said, Idiot child, father asks you, whose territory is this? Who would be the one who is in charge? Hearing this, Su Tunan immediately brightened up. Ha, it's still dad who's brilliant. Chapter 9 Master Goddess, little Yufu doesn't want you to die. In the meantime, the stone steps leading to the Qinghan Taoist temple. The little Taoist boy Yufu walked ahead with a sad face, rubbing his eyes every now and then. Ning Huanhuan followed not far behind Yufu. The whole person was like a lost soul, light foot and heavy foot. Her brain was blank. How could it suddenly not work? Obviously, that invalid father of ours was still able to eat and drink yesterday. How come today he was suddenly hit by a poison needle and his days are numbered? Her mind was in turmoil, with an indescribable complexity in her heart. Though he is very strict with me and throws all his pressure on me. Though he was also very old-fashioned and had to interfere in my love life. Although he drove my mother away back then and has been preventing me from seeing her all these years. Although he is still very selfish, only for his own preferences, forcing me to do things I do not want to do. Though he's still rude, going so far as to hit me with his hands. But he's my dad after all. Ning Huanhuan stopped and looked up blankly. Didn't he himself, on a regular basis, wish every day that he would go to his death earlier so that he could go to his mother? Why is it that when it really comes down to it, there's a hard feeling of being out of breath? What's wrong, Sister Joy? When the young Taoist boy Yufu saw Ning Huanhuan stop, he couldn't help but turn back and ask in a somewhat hoarse voice. It's nothing, you go up first, I'll stay here by myself for a while. Ning Huanhuan waved her hand, not caring. Seeing this, the little Taoist boy Yufu was anxious. Sister Huanhuan, Master Guanlong's days are numbered, aren't you half as anxious? Hearing this, Ning Huanhuan instantly became furious and scolded. What's it to you if I'm in a hurry or not? You're just a little Taoist boy we raised, and you're still meddling in my affairs? What is your status? The words fell. Ning Huanhuan smiled coldly and sneered. What? Why do you want to cry when I say a few words to you? To tell you the truth, I wish he would die earlier, so that I can go to my mother in name only. That's the great Luo Divine Sect, one of the top Taoist sects in the Zhongxian realm, much better than this Tai Taoist temple? The little Taoist boy Yufu could no longer hold back his words, raised his palm high, and shouted, Do you know that it was never the Guan Master who stopped you from seeing your mother, but your mother? To the mouth of the do not want you 3 words, the little Taoist boy Yufu, but how can not manage to brutally say out, Fight! Don't you want to hit me? Why don't you do it? What, you don't dare to fight? Ning Huanhuan tilted a face full of sarcasm as she stared at the little Taoist boy Yufu. The little Taoist boy Yufu took a deep breath and finally put his hand down. Ning Huanhuan, if you have any semblance of a conscience, go and take a look at Master Goddess. The little Taoist boy Yufu gave Ning Huanhuan a deep look, and in his eyes was a strangeness he had never seen before. Without another word, he turned around without hesitation and rushed towards the Qinghan Taoist temple. Bah, punk! Ning Huanhuan stared at the little Taoist boy Yufu's departing figure and spat disdainfully. Soon, the figure of the little Taoist boy, Yufu, disappeared at the end of the stone steps. As the moon rose, the dead trees swayed gently, shaking out their shadows. Ning Huanhuan blankly stood alone on the steps, then slowly sat down, her arms wrapped around over her knees, and her entire body curled up into a ball. Qinghan Taoist temple, inside the bedchamber. Ning Chuan was dressed in immaculate white clothes, sitting cross-legged on the bed with his palms facing upwards, only to see that on the palm of his hand, a golden beetle was quietly creeping. This is the golden armor Zimu bug, and the 2 bugs, Zimu and Zimu, are connected by their vision and their 5 senses. Oh, planning to gather other forces and come together to kill me? Ning Chuan couldn't help but let a faint smile spread across the corners of his mouth as he felt the information on the screen that the sub-insects were sending back. In that case, it was right up his alley. That peak cultivation talisman that lasted for half a quarter of an hour, if it was only used on a single Su clan in the district, he felt that it was really not worth it. Packed together for delivery, it's just right. Ning Chuan shook his head with a faint smile. Master Goddess. Just then, a tender child's voice with a crying tone sounded outside. Immediately afterward, he saw a small Taoist child, no more than half a man tall, rush headlong into the bedchamber. Ning Chuan didn't move and put his hands behind his back, a sickly pallor surfaced on his face, and his voice was weak. What's wrong, little Yufu? Little Yufu planted herself into Ning Chuan's arms and hugged Ning Chuan tightly, tears bearing down in big drops. Master Observer, you don't want to die. Little Yufu doesn't want you to die. Looking at the little Taoist child in his arms, who was crying with blurred tears and a hoarse voice, Ning Chuan was silent for a while. Does this so-called bloodline, really matter? Silly boy, how can I die when I haven't even seen the day when you make your mark? A softness flashed across Ning Chuan's eyes, and he rubbed Yufu's little head. Really? Really? Yufu raised his head and looked at Ning Chuan with a tear-filled face. Of course it's true, you should work hard on your cultivation, you'll have to protect me in the future. Ning Chuan smiled. Outside the door of the bedchamber room, realist Yu Ming and realist Yu Chun looked at the duo inside through the thin paper of the window and couldn't help but smile at each other. Yu Fu, this child, was abandoned in the city of Gusu. That was a big winter. He was wrapped in a rotten jacket, the face is frozen purple. If it is not touching the master brother, I'm afraid to freeze to death in the street, by the wild dogs to go. A flash of nostalgia flashed in the eyes of realist Yu Ming. The staggering Yu Chun realist, in a rare moment of quietness, smiled as he took over the conversation and said, over the years, although little Yu Fu has never explicitly said so, in his heart, he has actually long since looked upon senior brother Ning as his father. Let's go and leave the two of them alone. Realist Yu Ming pushed his wheelchair away, and realist Yu Chun quickly followed. The duo quickly disappeared at the end of the long corridor. Inside the bedchamber. To practice the immovable Qinggong, you must remember the following 3 points, the first being the breathing method. The so-called breathing method is the way of breathing and exhaling. A good breathing method can play a multiplier effect in the cultivation of. Ning Chuan spoke slowly. The little Taoist boy Yu Fu sat in front of him in a disciplined manner, wiping away the tears on his face. His little face was all serious, trying hard to memorize every word Ning Chuan said. In his opinion, this was the first time that Master Goddess had personally taught him, and it might also be the last time that he would be taught in this life. No matter how much sadness was in his heart, he had to suppress that sadness now. Himself for sure. Mustn't let Master Kanji down. Crunch. Just then, the door to the room was pushed open. A beautiful young girl, striding into the bedchamber, first glanced at Ning Chuan, then at Yu Fu, who was obediently sitting in front of Ning Chuan, listening attentively, with an inexplicable sourness in her heart. Yu Fu didn't say anything more, only after giving Ning Huanhuan a deep look, he got up and bowed towards Ning Chuan, his voice sincere. Master Goddess, little Yu Fu will see you later. The words fell. Yu Fu brushed past Ning Huanhuan without even glancing at her. Bah, this little Yu Fu, still pretending in front of me. Ning Huanhuan grunted in displeasure, then took a deep breath and looked towards Ning Chuan on the bed. Hey, are you really dying? Aha. Then you have to hurry. If you leave, I'll go to the Great Luo Divine Sect to join my mother. I've heard that it's the real heaven on earth there. Wow, just thinking about it is really exciting. Good. After receiving Ning Chuan's short answer, Ning Huanhuan fell silent. Ning Chuan didn't open his mouth either, and just looked at her faintly. Hey, if you apologize to me and say that you've been wrong all these years, I can be merciful and go find mother to save you. I'm sure she won't refuse if I ask. Ning Huanhuan raised her head and crossed her arms, looking at Ning Chuan with her chin, with a haughty look of waiting for you to obediently admit your mistake. It's not necessary. Ning Chuan shook his head. You. Ning Huanhuan immediately stagnated, and then stomped her foot in annoyance, the old curmudgeon who wants to save face and live to suffer. I don't care if you like to die or not. After saying that, Ning Huanhuan turned away in a huff. This guy, it's come to this and he still won't bow down. Forget it. I'm sorry I was so kind. Knew this guy wouldn't appreciate it. With a bang, the door to the room was slammed heavily by Ning Huanhuan. Ning Chuan's face was calm as he withdrew his gaze and shook his head slightly, beginning to close his eyes in a false sleep. Chapter 10 Tonight, at the stroke of midnight, step on Qingshan and cut down Ning Chuan. Several days passed in a flash. The foot of Qingming Mountain, which is usually quite cold and quiet, has been bustling with activity in the past few days. There are travelers, picking up mountain goods, passed by Qingming Mountain. This Taoist master, do you want to see these goods of mine? They are all good items from the mountains. Look at the color of this sable, 3 tails of silver is definitely not bad. No need. Real Yu Ming sat in his wheelchair, his eyes filled with blood and his gaze empty. Ha? Taoist master, what's wrong with you? Did you encounter something? The cargo man raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Nothing. Do you have any white streamers and scented candles here? If there are, I'll buy some. This. Where would I sell those things? It's too unlucky. Could it be that the Taoist master's family has had a white incident recently? Ugh. The Yu Ming realist just let out a long sigh and waved his hand towards the cargo man, signaling to leave. The cargo man picked his stretcher and walked away, and in the moment he turned around, a flash of joy sprang up in the eyes of the cargo man. Realist Yu Ming looked at the departing back of the cargo man, and in his originally empty eyes, it gradually turned into a piece of disdain. With this much strength, you come to spar with me in acting? The other side. A woman picking tofu wiped the beads of sweat from her forehead and hurriedly tugged at a lanky figure in a wide Taoist robe. This Taoist master, take a look at my family's white tofu. It was only ground out last night, and I'll make sure you don't squeak once you eat one. That burly Taoist stopped at the sight, lifted the curtain on the tofu, touched the bouncy white tofu with his hand, and said in a hoarse voice, in a few days, my Qingshan Taoist temple will need 30 pounds of white tofu. May I do a good job of sending it up? That much? The woman was slightly surprised and said, could it be the Taoist master is going to hold a white banquet recently? What business is it of yours? The poor Taoist is just asking you, can you deliver it? The burly, Dao-robed figure frowned heavily and said with extreme impatience, don't be annoyed, I will definitely send it. The woman hurriedly smiled. That's fine. Realist Yu Chun whisked his sleeve and left. After he left, the woman selling tofu quickly left with her stretcher. Behind a big tree, Yu Chun Jinjin came out from behind the big tree, holding his arms and smiling coldly at the woman who appeared to be walking, but was actually walking at a light pace, her toes not even touching the ground. Such poor acting skills, and you want to act in front of me? Do you really think I'm a big stupid Chun? Shaking his head, Realist Yu Chun quickly walked towards the Taoist temple. The other side. In the city of Gusu, on the banks of the Huai River. Huanhuan, why have you been moping for the past 2 days? Su Tunan asked with a twitch of his mind. How am I moping? I'm happy. Ning Huanhuan stopped her steps, then tilted her pretty face up and lightly hummed, Mr. Su, in a few days at most, I'll be free. Oh, what does this mean? Su Tunan narrowed his eyes, then asked hesitantly. M.O. Could it be that your father, something has happened recently? Ning Huanhuan spread her hands, maybe he did too many evil things in the past, and now he's being condemned by heaven. Mr. Su, let's not talk about this. I remember that a noodle shop has opened in the south of the city. Let's go, let's try it. This. Okay. Su Tunan grabbed Ning Huanhuan's wrist, then his gaze was as gentle as water, and he said with deep emotion, Huanhuan, if anything happens, you must remember to tell me. I will help you even if I have to give everything. Hearing these words, Ning Huanhuan's heart warmed and she nodded heavily. Qingming Mountain, Qingxian Taoist Temple. Senior brother, as expected, there are a lot of new faces at the foot of the mountain lately, intentionally or unintentionally prying for news about you. Realist Yu Chun pushed Realist Yu Ming's wheelchair, striding into the grand hall. Ning Chuan sat cross-legged on the futon, and with a gentle wave of his right hand, the door closed tightly. Don't see anything strange, do you? Ning Chuan asked. Don't worry, with eldest brother and I out there, wouldn't that be a handful? Yu Chun Jinjin swore and patted his chest, smugly saying, what's the point of cheating these few small fishes and shrimps? When Master was still around, I drank until I was 3 times drunk and could act until Master was in tears. Can you die a day without bragging about yourself a little? Realist Yu Ming glanced at Ning Chuan without any good humor, then looked at Ning Chuan and said suspiciously, a senior brother, I just have one thing I don't understand. Senior brother, please. Ning Chuan nodded. Yu Ming said, senior brother your cultivation now fell greatly, the strength of 100 does not exist, and then this time someone wants to secretly to you, should not be pulling the tiger's skin to make a big banner, feigning momentum to scare them off it? Why do you want to do the opposite, but also to show the enemy to be weak? Isn't this showing weakness to the enemy tantamount to exposing one's shortcomings, so that they'll hurry up and make their move? As soon as these words fell, Realist Yu Chun also scratched his head and fell into bitter thought. It wasn't until a long time had passed that Realist Yu Chun snapped his head up, his eyes shining with excitement as he asked, Senior brother Ning, M.O. Could it be that your cultivation has recovered? Unrecovered. Ning Chuan shook his head, then looked at the puzzled duo and said with a faint smile, Senior brothers and sisters, don't ask, I naturally have my reasons for doing this. Rather. Realist Yu Ming and Realist Yu Chun looked at each other and smiled, then they stopped talking. In the evening, the Su family in Gusu. Family master, good news. Today, I pretended to pass by Qingming Mountain without realizing it, and guess what? The atmosphere was so low. That jade bright realist even asked me about buying and selling soul streamer incense and candles, so it seems that Ning Chuan really does have his days numbered. Yeah. Today I also went to Qingming Mountain disguised as a tofu seller. As a result, hey, good fellow, that Yu Chun real person, is purchasing white tofu for the banquet. Father, do it. Today, I saw that Ning Huanhuan's reaction, and it's clear that Ning Chuan is already at the end of his rope. Others may lie, but Ning Huanhuan would never lie to me. Inside the main hall, a Korsu family member spoke in a chorus of voices. Good. It seems that this is heaven helping my Su family. Heaven has decided that the Su family should prosper. Su Jinping let out a loud laugh at his words, his face reddening. He was already able to imagine the pomp and circumstance of the Su family soaring into the sky. This makes Su Jinping cannot help but remember when he was a child, a fortune teller had given the Su family calculated prophecy. When the Su family is prospering, it is prospering in Jinping. Family master, then when do we make our move? Fifth elder Su Jinluan swallowed his saliva and opened his mouth to ask. Su Jinping did not reply, but instead looked at one of the elders who came in the dust and opened his mouth to ask, Old Three, the Changha Sword sect, the Shen Bottle Dao sect, the Songsan sect, and the Ouyang family of Hong'an City, when will the 4 forces, when will they be able to arrive in Gusa City? The third elder arched his hand at his words and said, reporting back to the family head, all the 4 directions of forces have already departed one after another, and at most, they will all arrive at Gusa City by the hour of midnight tonight. Good. Su Jinping nodded. That oldest 3, however, pondered for a moment and asked in a deep voice, Lord Family Master, should we talk to the oldest ancestor about this matter? No need. Su Jinping waved his hand and laughed. Let's make this matter happen without going through old ancestor and then give old ancestor a huge surprise. Wouldn't that be good? Having said that, Su Jinping turned around and sat on the large ebony chair, lifting his gaze to the boundless long sky, his eyes bursting with a shocking battle intent. He spoke in a single word. Tonight at the stroke of midnight, step on Qingxian and behead Ning Chuan. My 100-year Su family will, from today onwards, solemnize the heavens mandate and flourish in Song Yuan. Chapter 11. The advantage is mine, how can I lose? The night was like weaving a black net, enveloping the entire Gusa city. No wind, no moon, no stars tonight. Inside the Qingxian Taoist temple, realist Yu Ming, realist Yu Chun, the young Taoist boy Yu Fu, and Ning Huanhuan, had all fallen into a deep sleep. Taoist temple, outside the main hall, on the promenade. Ning Chuan's white shirt was immaculate as he sat cross-legged and looked into the distance. In the middle of the night sky, a number of sword lights suddenly swept rapidly from a great distance, dragging up long trailing flames because of their speed, like meteors cutting through the entire sky. Is it finally time to start? Ning Chuan's refined light flickered. Now he has two choices. First, wait for the Gusa Su family to prepare their troops and gather all the manpower to kill Qingming Mountain. He then used that peak experience rune lock for a quarter of an hour to blast all of them to regimentation in one fell swoop in full view of everyone. At that time, the Song Yuan would certainly be shaken and the world would be terrified. Everything he had lost might come back briefly again. The second was to directly strike first, stepping on the Su clan and the group of people invited to come and try to kill him, seizing the spirit medicine and absorbing the ethereal wood green chi. Then he would erase all traces of his strikes, develop peacefully, and grow his cultivation. A peak cultivation experience rune lock may indeed solve a lot of trouble for a short period of time, but it will never be able to conceal it for long, and when the time comes, it will backfire in a huge way. Ning Chuan took a deep breath, got up and stood up, slightly stretching his muscles and bones, his body making splintering sounds. In that case, make the first move. Boom! He merely took one step forward, and immediately, the mountains and rivers flipped over, the Qiankuan overturned, and he instantly disappeared within the Qingxian Taoist temple. In the meantime, Gusa City, in front of the Su family residence. Shoo shoo shoo. Only several brilliant sword rainbows were seen, falling quickly from the sky and standing in front of the Su mansion's main gate. The sword rainbow dispersed, revealing several figures. The leader is a middle-aged man with a square face, sword eyebrows into the temples, a pair of eyes stern to the extreme, as if containing a divine sword in the eyes. People do not dare to look directly. Patriarch Xuan, please hurry. Su Jinping greeted him with a smile and looked up and down towards this middle-aged man with a sword on his back, marveling. I haven't seen you for several years. Patriarch Xuan's elegance is even better than before. I'm afraid that half of his foot has already stepped into Jinwu, right? Before that middle-aged man could make a sound, a sword servant behind him said rather proudly, Our Lord Patriarch has already begun preparations to embark on a breakthrough to Jinwu. If it wasn't for you talking about that Ning Chuan matter, our Lord Patriarch would still be in seclusion to break through the realm. The Qinghan sword sect has extraordinary potential. I'm only afraid that it won't be long before it will be a clan of two Jinwu. Su Jinping chimed in. Clan Master Su, cut the crap. Is that Ning Chuan really not going to live long? Long River Sword Sect Patriarch Shuang Wudao spoke in a deep voice. 1,000 times over. Su Jinping laughed. Patriarch Shuang inside please, about the matter of Ning Chuan, our Su family's fifth elder, will tell you in detail. Good. Zhuang Wudao entered the mansion with large strides. Su Jinping smiled and proceeded to wait outside the door. It didn't take long. Boom dash. A golden aura that was as blinding as the sun fell down fiercely, transforming into an incomparably sturdy and tall figure, like an iron tower-like stout man. He carried his double hammers on his back, thunderous light in his eyes, not angry and authoritative, and his aura alone forced a group of Su family's children to retreat back and forth. Hong'an City, Ouyang Leihua, head of the Ouyang family. Farther out, an old man with a white beard and hair, dressed in a wide Taoist robe, looking immortal and with big flowing sleeves, stepped into the air step by step. He clearly did not exert any cultivation, yet it was as if heaven and earth were lifting him up and laying stone steps under his feet. Family Master Su, it's been a long time. The old man was floating in his arms. A faint smile. Sect leader of the treasure bottle Dao sect, Li Guangxian. A veteran powerhouse who had been immersed in the divine journey realm for a year. Boom dash. A ball of firelight swirled down and stood in front of the Su mansion's main gate. The firelight dispersed, revealing the figure of a flame-robed man. This person's eyebrows were crimson, his face was thin, and it was as if all the laws were spinning under his feet. The head of the Songshan sect, Ting Yanjinjin. A hand of fire law out of the gods, although not into the real realm, but the entire cloud state, the most top of the divine tour of the strong. For a moment, the entire Su mansion hall was filled with groups of young and old. Su Jinping assumed the role of not letting go and sat directly on the main seat. Seeing this, Zhuang Wudao and the 14 flame realists frowned slightly, but did not say anything more. I'm sure Zhenwan has already spoken to the 4 Taoists and made the situation clear, right? Su Jinping picked up the teacup and first blew the tea leaves on the surface of the water, then took a sip of the tea without haste before opening his mouth with a smile. Family Master Su, since you were able to ask us to come along, you must have full certainty in your heart, so there's no need to say anymore. This seat has crossed nearly 1,000 miles from Hong'an City and is only concerned about one thing. Yang Leihua's voice was dull as thunder, as if a thunderbolt had exploded. How should things be distributed after Ning Chuan's death? Su Jinping already had an answer in his mind and said with a slight smile, after Ning Chuan's death, no matter how much or how little his relics are, we'll split it equally among the 5 families, with each family getting 20%. But I have one condition, Ning Chuan's relics have to be picked by our Su family first. You guys are okay with this, right? As soon as these words fell, the 4 Ouyang Leihua looked at each other and all nodded slightly. It's reasonable to distribute it like this. Moreover, this matter was first discovered by your Su family, so it's fine to be the first to pick. The old man with big sleeves, Li Guangxian, opened his mouth. We likewise have no objection. The remaining 3 nodded. Yes. Su Jinping let out a loud laugh as he swept his gaze from the faces of Zhuang Wudao and Ouyang Leihua's 4 people and opened his mouth. Nanner, distribute the wine to the 4 seniors. Yes. Su Tunan excitedly picked up the wine cup and filled it for the 4 of them. 4 of you, let's raise our glasses together. If the 5 of us kill Ning Chuan on Qingning Mountain today, we will be famous in Sun Yuan tomorrow and go down in history. Su Jinping was the first to take a sip of the wine in his cup. The remaining 4 hesitated and similarly downed their wine. At the stroke of midnight, we will depart for Qingning Mountain. That little Ning Chuan is now a wasted body, with a cultivation level of at most Tongming, and not even Tongming yet. We 5, all of us are peak divine journey powerhouses, even if Ning Chuan has the power of the heavens, with 1,000 techniques and 10,000 methods in his possession, what can we do? Su Jinping will be in the hands of the wine cup, ruthlessly smashed to the ground, bravado opening. When the other 4 heard this, their eyes became equally hot. Ning Chuan. These 2 words carried too much weight in the Song Yuan realm. He is the amazing talent of the world's great pride. The pressure of a great world cannot raise their heads of the amazing myth, the crown of the contemporary invincible people, countless pride in the heart of the mountain that cannot cross. Such a person was about to perish in their hands. Even if they are usually as a party master, the state of mind has long been sharpened. The ancient well, joy and anger do not show color. At this moment is also the heart and soul has never been moved up. I've heard that Ning Chuan is an artistry wizard, holding 100 years of artistry and carrying 1,000 years of law on his shoulders. Old me, on the other hand, is equally famous for my artistry aptitude, and this time, I'd like to see if that Ning Chuan's artistry is stronger or weaker than that of old me. Li Guangxian smiled and opened his mouth, and there were endless flashes of brilliant Dao aura in his eyes. That Ning Chuan once stepped on the waves of the East Sea to cut down a dragon, and his sword opened the gates of heaven under the Kunlun moon. This time, this clan would like to see whose sword is sharper, mine or his. Zhuang Wudao lightly sipped his wineglass, his eyes gulped with refined light, and the divine sword in the sword gate on his back had continuously emitted a clanging sword sound, seemingly unable to hold back from leaving its sheath and startling the world. This seat only wants to see how many more points that Ning Chuan's hybrid true strength, which he relies on to oppress the great world, can still be exerted. Ouyang Leihua's body was surging with battle intent. Although Ting Yanjinjin did not speak, there were flames in his eyes, eager to try. Seeing this, Su Jinping couldn't help a smile spread across the corners of his mouth. The 5 peak divine travelers had gathered together, which could be considered the top lineup that the entire cloud state could hold, just to deal with a regionally wasted Ning Chuan. 5 against 1, the advantage is mine. TSK, this battle. Really don't know how you're going to lose, huh? Su Jinping let out a kind laugh in his heart. In this world, there are always ants in the dust that like to challenge the greatness of the elephant. Outside the Su mansion, a figure with a white shirt that won the snow stood quietly in front of the door, looking at the dim light coming through inside. Ning Chuan crushed the talisman in his hand, and a boundary instantly enveloped the entire Su mansion, isolating it from all probing. He strides forward and pushes the door open. This is stupid confidence. Chapter 12, 3 inches of earth, refined. Click. The moment Ning Chuan crushed that talisman, his aura instantly fell to the extreme, just like a mortal. But in an instant, a flash of immortal light abruptly leapt out of the deepest recesses of Ning Chuan's divine soul. Boom dash. Within his body, the Dantian divine sea, which was originally just like a small pond, instantly skyrocketed into an ocean, with countless flying immortal lights rising up, and every single hair and piece of his skin exuding immortal golden light. Ning Chuan slowly closed his eyes. Transformation of the Void Eye. The 5-fold transformation of the Void. 9 levels of transformed emptiness. Divine Journey 1. Divine Journey Triple. God traveled 9 times. Zhengou's first karmic realm. Zhengou's third karmic realm. Jinwu 10 havoc realm. A long time coming. Ning Chuan's eyes opened abruptly, and countless great Dao runes flashed steeply in the depths of his pupils. Boom dash. In an instant, as Ning Chuan opened his eyes, a horrifying pressure that was like an abyss and a prison through the heavens and the earth, like a horrifying tsunami, instantly surged out with him at the center, waves lapping at the shore and enveloping the entire Su mansion. That Su clan's Dao protector formation, which was sufficient to withstand the Jinwu havoc realm, broke apart and crumbled into pieces in an instant. A boundary burst forth with it, enveloping the entire Su clan. Who? In an instant, Su Jinping, who originally had a relaxed smile on his face within the Su mansion's main hall, suddenly had his smile frozen and his face changed violently. Family master, we'll go take a look. In the next moment, Su Tunin, as well as a group of Su clan elders, rushed out of the main hall in large strides. Only to see that under the night, the gate of the Su mansion shattered, and a figure with a white shirt that was snowy and covered with immortal radiance, like an exiled immortal in the dust, stepped in. Every time he took a step, countless Dao laws appeared and disappeared under his feet. Ning Chuan? Hiss dash. Why is Ning Chuan here? What's going on? Isn't Ning Chuan on the verge of a great death and his days are numbered? How did he appear here? Hasn't he been hit by my poison needle and is about to die? The faces of the group of Su family elders changed greatly, and an extremely bad premonition inexplicably surged in their hearts. Peak power. It's been a long time coming. Ning Chuan shook his head, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the group of Su clan elders. Thumbs up. Noble asterisk. Just a glance. A lotus blossomed within his eyes. Boom boom boom. That group of Su family elders, instantly starting from feet to head, annihilated into pieces inch by inch, turning into a rain of light that dissipated into the void. This scene was bizarre to the extreme, and Su Tunin, who had slightly escaped from lagging behind a group of Su family elders, saw this and immediately had his feet stuttered, his mouth wide open as he stared blankly at this scene, and then his entire body trembled uncontrollably. Ning Chuan, it's Ning Chuan. This invincible person who had once crowned the current generation had not only not declined by half. Instead, he personally came to the Su clan's ancestral land, and with a mere glance, he exterminated a group of Su clan's elders. In this moment, a chill went straight from his feet to his head, and fear, like a large hand, instantly clutched his heart. Poof! Uncontrollably, his knees went soft, and his entire body instantly knelt down, his face as pale as paper, and his body trembling like a sieve. At this moment, even if he was stupid, he understood. This former myth of the moment has never fallen from grace. The Su family, and even the whole world, has been deceived. Ning Chuan, can you look at Huanhuan's face and spare me once? Su Tunin looked at Ning Chuan with a face full of despair, his heart already understanding. Today, the Su family's so-called ambush had completely turned into a joke. Oh, you're quick to respond. Ning Chuan glanced at Su Tunin. If he remembers correctly, in his previous life, he did not take action against the Su family, but after selling the Qingxian Taoist temple, he continued to teach Ning Huanhuan with great dedication. So this Su Tunin then naturally continued to trick Ning Huanhuan around, and later through the hands of Ning Huanhuan tricked Ning Chuan's countless divine arts and techniques, and had also achieved something in his previous life. When Ning Chuan was in his old age, Su Tunin had even approached him and smiled with a faint sneer. Old man, I didn't expect it, but everything you've done, in the end, you've only done me a favor in the end. Don't worry, I won't kill you, I'll marry Ning Huanhuan and let you watch with your own eyes how I'll rely on your artistry aptitude to reach the top. Collecting his thoughts, Ning Chuan shook his head. In this life, it was impossible for him to give Su Tunin any chance since you are given one breath to take one last look at the world. Ning Chuan indifferently spat out a sentence. No! In Su Tunin's desperate yell. Ning Chuan merely flexed his fingers, and Su Tunin's head instantly exploded with a boom, turning the entire person into a puddle of blood. Next moment. Nanner! 5 figures instantly rushed out from within the hall, and Su Jinping saw this and let out a heart-rending roar. Ning Chuan? This breath. Jinwu realm. In an instant, Zhuang Wudao, Li Guangxian, and the others felt the aura emanating from Ning Chuan, and their pupils instantly shrunk wildly. Immediately afterward, they raised their heads to look at the boundary that blocked off the entire Su clan, and their faces became incomparably ugly. There's no way to retreat. It's in a jar. Ning Chuan, you return my son's life. Su Jinping's eyes were filled with blood, and his entire body rose up to the sky, jealously slapping down a palm towards Ning Chuan. Su Tunin was his only son. At this moment his own son died on the spot. He simply hated his liver and gall. He already had no time to think, and did not care about anything else. Not good. The Su family has been tricked. This boundary. There's no way back, so let's do it together and kill him. Ning Chuan could never have regained all his cultivation. I'm only afraid that he used some forbidden technique and couldn't hold on for long. Kill. With the 5 of us joining forces, even if a true Gajira realm powerhouse were to arrive in person, he would have to steer clear. The remaining 4 great powerhouses, their eyes flickered with refined confusion. They were, after all, the lords of a party's power, and they quickly calmed their minds. Without any hesitation, they directly operated their cultivation to the extreme and killed towards Ning Chuan in unison. Boom 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 boom. 5-peak divine journey, and even already possessing a few moments of true myriad's terrifying aura, emanated from all 5 of them at the same time, startling the world. Fire technique, 9 gods burning palm. A flame-robed Ting flame realist was spinning with true essence, and his hands pushed forward fiercely. Endless flames suddenly surged out crazily, turning the entire night sky into a sea of fire. Burning mountains and boiling seas, refining the void. Then, the flames twisted and changed, instantly transforming into 900-foot flame giants that passed through the heavens and through the enemy. The 9 fire gods simultaneously looked down towards Ning Chuan, and then raised their large hands, burning the void and simultaneously slapping down hard towards Ning Chuan. Sword technique, chopping heaven technique. Zhuang Wudao, the sect master of the Qinghan sword sect, likewise instantly unsheathed his sword and chopped down towards Ning Chuan. Chant dash. A clanging sword sound shook the 9 heavens. 100 feet sword rainbow that was sharp to the extreme appeared. Under this sword, it was as if 1,000 feet of emptiness was going to be torn apart, and 100 miles of earth were going to be disconnected. Ning Chuan, the world says that you're a god of magic. Today, I, Li Guangxian, invite you to have a look at my method. Avatar Yin Yang Life and Death Diagram. Li Guangxian's beard and hair were raised, his right hand pinched and let out a loud shout. In the void, countless auras converged, transforming into a yin and yang fish pattern formation, which resembled a great grinding wheel that wiped out everything, spinning and crashing towards Ning Chuan. There was also Ouyang Lei Hua, his right hand drew towards the middle of the void, and even countless thunderbolts grew and silver snakes traveled, drawing out a Mori blue thunder god spear in his void. Thunder rumbled like the wrath of the heavens. Dazzling lightning flashed across the entire Gushu city. At this moment, the 5-peak divine traveling powerhouses struck out, literally causing the heavens to crumble and the ghosts to wail. The sound was loud to the extreme. No one stayed. Everyone knew that if they wanted to survive this battle, they had to be killed first. Rumble. As the 5 made their move, the entire Gusa city was alarmed. Countless cultivators within Gusa city seemed to sense something. Their faces changed at the same time, and they violently raised their heads to look in the direction of the Su clan. What's going on here? Someone is having a big battle in the Su family. Hiss dash. That sword light, it seems to be the Long River Sword Sect Patriarch's heaven slashing technique. That yin-yang life and death formation diagram is Li Guangxian, the sect leader of the Treasure Bottle Dao sect. There's also Ouyang Leihua, the head of the Ouyang family, the headmaster of the Songshan sect, Ting Yanjinjin. All the aura of the peak of divine journey. My goodness. The divine journey realm is also known as the realm of the sealed king amongst the cultivation realms. Once one reaches this realm, one can become an overlord of a party and dominate it like a prince. Who can make these 5 great overlords strike at the same time? They looked towards the Su clan, but they saw that the entire Su clan was covered by a hazy light shield, making it impossible to see the scene inside clearly. Then, they quickly got up and rushed towards the Su family. Ning Chuan, are you dead or not? Outside the Su clan's main hall, the 5-peak divine journey powerhouses unanimously executed their crushing aptitudes and killed towards Ning Chuan. Facing Ning Chuan, these 5 people did not hold back anything, and the moment they struck, they were the Gaijin. A hint of evening breeze blew Ning Chuan's full head of black hair. Ning Chuan raised his head to look, only to see flames burning the sky, thunderous light astounding the world, sword chi strangling heaven and earth, and a world-defying divine ability completely occupying all of his field of vision as it pressed toward him. Divine journey realm, very strong. Yuanshan swims in the Taishu, looking towards the North Sea and Twilight Kangwu. God swims in one realm, and in the eyes of mortals is already an immortal. As the 5th realm among the 8 realms of cultivation, even if placed in the entire Song Yuan realm, Xinyu realm cultivators are famous existences, and there are even good people who call it the Marquis realm. These 5, moreover, were the best in the divine journey realm. Just a shame. Ants. Ning Chuan was expressionless as he casually grabbed his hand into the void. He had no interest in wasting his time on these guys. 3 inches of earth, refining. As Ning Chuan spat out the word refine. Boom dash. In an instant, chaos gas erupted, and the entire heaven and earth blurred and distorted. Immediately afterward, the void was frozen in this moment. The 100 feet of emptiness where Su Jinping, Zhuang Wudao, Li Guangxian, and the other 5 powerhouses were located, along with that one world-shaking divine ability, was actually rapidly shrinking under this grasp, as if it had turned from 3-dimensional to 2-dimensional, and the entire heaven and earth was going to be refined into a magnificently beautiful picture scroll. Boom boom boom. The void kept shrinking. 3 breaths later. The 5-peak divine journey powerhouses, as well as the brilliant and dazzling divine abilities, all disappeared. A magnificent scroll that looked like gold leaf slowly fell from the air and was grasped in Ning Chuan's hands. 100 feet of emptiness, infinite arts. All of them were transformed into 3-inch scrolls. Ning Chuan lowered his head and glanced at the scroll that lay silently across his palm. On the scroll, only the scene that had been framed just now was leaping off the page, and on the scroll, one could even see the horrified expressions of Su Jinping's 5 people, as well as the heaven-destroying divine ability. Lifelike and alive. Next moment. Click. Ning Chuan's 5 fingers exerted a slight force, and the entire scroll crumbled into pieces. Chapter 13 Yunzhou shakes. Demon Sect Master Wei Tianhe. Time is running out. Ning Chuan felt the cultivation within his body, and then without any further hesitation, a wave of divine sense instantly swept across the entire Su family residence. An attic pavilion, a palace room, all fell into Ning Chuan's eyes. Found it. Ning Chuan's eyes flickered as he looked to the southeast. There was an acre of medicinal field there, and dozens of spirit medicines were budding, emitting a rich ethereal wood-green aura. That ethereal wood-green chi, even green and purple, was far from being comparable to those ordinary trees in Qingming Mountain. Come on! Ning Chuan couldn't help but have a smile on his face as he grabbed his right hand in the air, and the elixir suddenly flew through the air and was put into his sleeve. These spirit medicines were enough to propel his cultivation to the third level of transformation void. He didn't stop moving and once again looked at a 3-story pavilion. These weapons and magic treasures. Rather, they are also just right for me to use to cultivate the Gung-Jin Qi. Afterwards, Ning Chuan quickly removed all the weapons and magic treasures from the Su family's entire hidden weapons pavilion, and incidentally gleaned all the storage rings and accompanying magic treasures from Su Jinping, Zhuang Wudao, and the others without sparing a single one. There's no way around it, and right now he's just one word. Poor. After doing so, Ning Chuan gazed outside of Gusa City. Countless cultivators were coming from all directions, wanting to take a look at the situation, making a bit of a ruckus. Ning Chuan frowned, then seemed to remember something, his eyes lit up, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The Great Hand Seal of the Innate One. A large hand that covered the sky, condensed in the void, each palm pattern seemed like a great road, ruthlessly slapping down towards the entire Su mansion. Boom dash! The large palm instantly pressed down, as if the dome of the sky was falling, and countless buildings in the entire Su mansion, all collapsed and crumbled into pieces under this palm. Immediately afterward, a scarlet flame spread out with Ning Chuan as its center, and then turned the entire Su mansion clan land into a sea of fire. With a single step, Ning Chuan instantly shot up into the sky and left the Su clan land. Underneath it, the raging sea of fire engulfed the entire Su clan land, turning it all into ashes and burying all traces of the battle. In the deepest part of the Su family's land, a coffin was quietly placed. Suddenly, the stone lid of the coffin slowly opened. An old man with a rotten aura opened his eyes blankly. This is happening? His face was puzzled and his eyes rolled as he was trying to find out what had happened. Boom dash! Suddenly, a terrifying white jade hand that covered the sky and could not be described in any words had covered the entire Su clan land, incidentally pressing down hard towards him. True. Zhenggo Ten hijacks? This Su family's old ancestor, who had been close to death for many years, instantly lost the blankness on his face, and replaced it with a flash of horror as if he were looking at a ghost. His eyes widened in disbelief as he broke into a fit of rage. See your mother's ghost. I've only been in seclusion for 3 years, how could our Su family have incurred a mighty giant of the Jinwu 10th tribulation? Rumble dash. This palm, in the middle of his pupils, was constantly enlarging and re-enlarging, not waiting for him to make any moves. This palm had been like an emperor star smashing down, ruthlessly blasting him into pieces. In the middle of mid-air, Ning Chuan's figure and appearance suddenly began to change continuously, his eyes became narrow and sharp, his pupils turned into a black color, and the outline of his face became square and heavy-browed, not angry and authoritative. Even the snow-winning white clothes were transformed into a black cloak. A strand of black demonic chi as viscous as ink surged out with him at the center, dyeing the entire sky into a shade of ink and obscuring his figure. Inside Gusu City, countless cultivators who had rushed from all over the city were suddenly on their feet, their gazes swiping up into the air in unison. Is this? A puzzled look welled up in their eyes. Boom dash! Only Ning Chuan's figure began to expand and grow larger, and in just a few breaths, it completely transformed into a gigantic, blood-colored crow that swallowed the sky and ate the earth. In its circumference, there are countless palm-sized black crows mixed with surging devilish gas, across the sun and the moon, as if all the crows are dedicated to the Devil Master. Next moment. Wherever the devil cult comes, all those who disobey shall be burned with fire and fall into the infernal blood prison forever. A voice that was low to the core exploded over the entire Gusa city. In a split second, the countless cultivators who had rushed from all over the city finally seemed to remember something and instantly changed their faces wildly, losing their voices in unbelievable shock. This is Demon Sect Master Wei Tianhe. Wei Tianhe, Blood Crow Demon Monarch, the second disciple of invincible Ning Chuan once. My god, how could he appear in Yunzhou? The top 10 of the current Heaven's Pride ranking, Demon Monarch Wei Tianhe has appeared in Gusa City. In the middle of the sky, under the full moon. Ning Chuan, who had transformed into a gigantic blood raven, looked down with a cold gaze, and a flash of satisfaction could not help but flash through the depths of his eyes. The name of this second disciple of our own family seems to work quite well, doesn't it? Then, Ning Chuan once again glanced at the Su clan's ancestral land, which had been turned into a sea of fire, and could not help but frown slightly. I think I just slapped something to death in passing? Forget it, time is running out, I have to hurry. I need to destroy the remaining 4 clans that are participating in today's battle, and seize all the things that I will use for my next cultivation. Boo! Ning Chuan stepped on his feet, instantly stomping a huge crater into the void. Countless crows were at his back, transforming into a pair of black, narrowly feathered wings, while his entire body had rushed up into the sky and disappeared at the end of the sky. Inside Gusu City, looking at Ning Chuan's departing back, countless cultivators looked at each other in horror, all of them able to see the shocked colors in each other's eyes. Wait, hasn't Blood Crow Demon Monarch Wei Tianhe been active in Central State since he left Ning Chuan back then? How could he suddenly appear in Yunzhou? Not good. Demon Sect Master Wei Tianhe has suddenly descended on Yunzhou. Something big is bound to happen in Yunzhou. Quickly, report this matter back to the sect. Yunzhou, there's going to be a big change. For a moment, the city was filled with sensation. Countless cultivators immediately drove up the recluse and without any hesitation, quickly flew towards their respective sects. Day 2. Wei Tianhe, the demon sect master, personally descended on Yunzhou last night, slaughtering 5 major forces in a row: the Su family of Gusu, the Ouyang family of Hong'an City, the Chang'e sword sect, the Baobao Dao sect, and the Songzhan sect. The gods traveled and fell like rain, and Jin Wu's bloodied path disappeared. In just one night, the 5 major first-class forces that stood in Yunzhou were all uprooted. Only the Baobao Daoist sect's Jin Wu 3-jacked old ancestor, the wheel-light realist, was left, escaping by chance and fleeing in fear towards the northern plains. This piece of news swept through Yunzhou like a hurricane, shocking countless people's eyeballs. For a moment, the cloud state was in shock, and there was an uproar in all parts of the country. Countless people have speculated that the devil sect master Wei Tianhe suddenly visited the cloud state for what? Some people speculate whether the cloud state has the most precious treasure out of the world. There are also people feel that the devil sect master Wei Tianhe, whether this visit is related to Ning Chuan? After all, the peerless Ning Chuan who had crowned the current generation 10 years ago was now living in seclusion in the cloud state after failing to survive the half-saint tribulation. As for blood-raven demon Monarch Wei Tianhe, he was arguably the strongest disciple among Ning Chuan's 7 disciples back then. He was also the last of the 7 disciples to leave Ning Chuan. One time. There are many different opinions and a lot of light. Speculation is rife. All in all, with this Songyuan realm newcomer, Wei Tianhe, the demon sect master whose reputation had shaken after leaving Ningchuan, suddenly appeared in Yunzhou. The entire Yunzhou was in complete chaos. All the major forces were on edge, and there were dark currents. And in the meantime, the demon sect master Wei Tianhe from last night, however, was walking towards the Qinghan Taoist temple with a smile on his face and hands. This time, Harry. Chapter 14 Elevation. Great Creation. Senior Brother Ning. Master Observer. Ning Chuan was still on the stone steps, only to see 2 figures, a thin one and a fat one, were one rapidly pushing a wheelchair, the hub scratching sparks on the ground, while the other was as fit as a fiddle, all rushing towards him. Senior Brother Yu Ming? Senior Brother Yuchen? Ning Chuan froze at the sight. Egu, Senior Brother Ning, where have you been this early in the morning? Something big happened in Gusu City last night, Realist Yu Chun said with an anxious look on his face. I just walked down the hill. Why? Realist Yu Chun glanced to the left and right, then lowered his voice and said, You don't know yet, do you? Last night, that kid Tianhe came back, and also destroyed the 5 major sects of the Gusu family, the Hong'an City Ouyang family, the Chang'e sword sect, the Treasure Bottle Dao sect, and the Songzhan sect. Hiss. Really? Ning Chuan was shocked at his words. Of course it's true. It's all over Yunzhou right now, all the major clans are discussing this matter. Not waiting for Realist Yu Chun to finish his sentence, only to see that Realist Yu Ming had already spoken quietly from the sidelines. Senior brother, it's fine for you to cheat Big Silly Spring, but you even want to cheat me? Ha? What is Senior Brother talking about? Ning Chuan's face did not move, but his heart was slightly shaken. Could it be that this eldest senior brother of his own saw that the Wei Tianhe of last night was him in disguise? Still acting? Realist Yu Ming glared at Ning Chuan without any good humor, then hummed, I told you why you were showing the enemy weakness, so it turns out that you were using that Tianhe brat as a backhand. Last night, Tianhe would suddenly show up in Gusu City at your behest, right? After a pause, a wise light came out from the eyes of real Yu Ming. There is no such thing as coincidence in this world. You happened to be attacked, and as a result, Trina came out. This must be a collusion between you 2 masters and disciples, right? This can be hidden from others, but it can still be hidden from Senior Brother me? After saying that, Realist Yu Ming then leaned back slightly, looking at Ning Chuan with a self-satisfied smile on his face, with a, don't pretend, I've seen through everything long ago, look of wisdom. This. Ning Chuan opened his mouth and finally extended a thumbs up and said, Elder brother is wise. I told you that Tianhe brat wouldn't be so heartless. Hasn't he always been thinking of you, his master? Real Yu Ming stroked his beard and laughed out loud. Immediately, a few people casually chatted about those disciples of Ning Chuan's who had once been there, and after a slight chat, Ning Chuan excused himself. Qinghan Taoist Temple was established on top of Qingming Mountain, covering a wide area. At the back of the Qinghan Taoist Temple, there was another mountain peak with slightly higher terrain that was connected to it. Most of the people in the Taoist temple refer to this mountain as the back mountain. Ning Chuan came straight to the back of the mountain, and then with a flick of his large hand, a covering formation instantly enveloped the entire back of the mountain, and an infinite fog enveloped the entire top of the back of the mountain. Phew! Ning Chuan, who had been running around all night last night, was finally taking a breather. Last night, when he borrowed his second disciple Wei Tianhe's vest, he did so on an impromptu basis. So much trouble can be saved. As for what Wei Tianhe himself would think, had to he's a master who cares what his disciple thinks. It's just a pity that last night's time was still too crowded, allowing the Trugu 3 Heavens realms will light realist to escape. Ning Chuan shook his head with slight regret, and immediately stopped thinking about it. If you run away, you run away. There's always a way out of an injustice. Go get revenge on Wei Tianhe. With a flick of his right hand, countless spirit medicines flew out from among his storage rings and piled up into small mountains in front of him. An extremely dense and surging ethereal wood green chi instantly shrouded the entire mountaintop, turning it into a sea of green. Ning Chuan merely took a deep breath, and felt the entire Dantian divine sea begin to boil. The original soybean-sized ethereal wood seed, but also has the momentum of rooting and sprouting. Indeed, hitting the house is the greatest road to revival. I also don't know what step of my cultivation will I be able to reach after absorbing all of this ethereal wood green chi, all of it? Ning Chuan sighed. All of these elixirs were obtained from the 5 major forces such as the Gususu family. If he were to collect them on his own, he wouldn't know how long it would take. Mixed True Scripture, open. Ning Chuan slowly closed his eyes as his cultivation began to revolve. Boom dash. In an instant, the ethereal wood green chi that was so thick that it was almost about to condense into substance was all of a sudden pulled, surging wildly towards Ning Chuan. A great metamorphosis has begun. Time passes slowly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed since Blood Crow Demon Monarch Wei Tianhe had appeared in the cloud state. During these 3 days, Ning Chuan hadn't taken a step away from the back of the mountain, absorbing the ethereal wood green chi frantically day and night. His cultivation level, at a speed that had never been seen before, began to surge up in knots. And as time festered, the matter of Blood Raven Demon Lord Wei Tianhe began to spread out to the rest of the great states in the Zhongyuan realm. The moment. In the central state, on top of a mountain range of rolling hills, 3 figures were standing on top of a mountain. The person on the leftmost is an extremely tall figure, a colorful red girdle waist open long skirt, waist surplus, hair casually pulled up sultry woman. This girl had a pair of foxy eyes, and between her knitted brows and smile, her charming bones were heavenly, extremely hot. The so-called earthly creature is nothing more than that. The person on the far right was a green-shirted man with a thin face and a vertical stripe growing from his eyebrows. This person was clearly not very old, at most only 30 years old or so, but his temples were frosty. At this moment, these 2 people are just like a needlepoint against a wheat aristocrat, both have a cold smile at the corner of their mouths, and as Owenti and Hidi's aura keeps colliding with each other. Boom boom boom. With the duo as the center, the mountains were stirred and trembled continuously. Among the 3, the person who was sandwiched in the middle was a rather thin, sharp-tongued youth, who was currently looking helpless. If someone was here at the moment, they would recognize these 3 people. Red Dust Witch, Yume. The 5th disciple under Ning Chuan's seat originally came from a greenhouse, a flower girl. Subsequently, by chance, he worshipped under Ning Chuan, acquired the heavenly sound magic technique, and embarked on the path of cultivation. 8 years ago, Yume left the Qingxian Taoist temple, and in a battle in Linen City, killed Yu Qingling, the 10th on the heavens remarks list, stripped his entire body of skin and flesh, and made a human skin drum, which shocked the world. Nowadays, this woman had joined the Red Dust Palace and was in the position of the Red Dust Palace's 2nd palace master. That person with a green shirt and mysterious vertical lines growing from his eyebrows was Ning Chuan's 4th disciple, Xie. This person was originally a Qianyang Palace student, because the Qianyang Palace that this person's heart is not right, the means of vicious and venomous, will be driven out of the Qianyang Palace, turned into a lost dog. Later this person worshipped under Ning Chuan and became Ning Chuan's 4th disciple. 5 years ago, Xie left the Qingxian Daoist temple and was famous for using a trick to pit thousands of cultivators in a battle at the Sea of Desire Plains. The spider web of intelligence organizations that now covers the entire Zhongyuan realm was built by this person in these 5 years. Among the cultivation world, he was referred to as the Spider Lord. As for the one who stood in the center, in a dilemma, with a compensatory smile on his face, it was Yan Qingxing, the 7th disciple under Ning Chuan's seat. Yan Qingxing, in Ning Chuan's 7 disciples ranked the youngest. The combat strength is not outstanding, but the body law is amazing, thieving magic. Among the cultivation world, this person was known as the Thousand-Faced Thief and the Divine Walker. 5 years ago, this person similarly left the Qingxian Daoist temple. 5th senior sister, 4th senior brother, we are all from the same school, so if you have something to say, can you not pinch on each other as soon as you meet? Yan Qingxing stood in the center, swaying left and right from the 2 men's air pressure rush, and hurriedly shouted, "Shut up! Who are you to talk?" Yume and Xie Qingyi spoke in unison and looked at each other angrily. Then, the 2 of them looked at each other once again, and the cold smile in their eyes increased. 5th senior sister good means now that Red Dust Palace Duan Palace master went off the rails while practicing, I think the entire Red Dust Palace has all fallen into senior sister's hands, right? Xie Qingyi laughed sorrowfully. Yume's smile didn't change as she sniffed, and returned with the same sneer. 4th senior brother isn't bad, he's really well informed, my palace master went off the rails just last month, and you know about this? By the way, say a few days ago we read Dust Palace to find out a spy, do not know which forces of people, but the bones are very hard, rather die also refused to say their roots, I have no choice but to do as she wished, she stripped the flesh and blood, her bones made into a guqin, you want to listen to the sound of that piano? No need, senior sister you keep yourself to listen to it, but it is the Red Dust Palace recently some disciples, secretly intend to put into my spider web too. Senior sister is still not strict in her control. Xie Qingyi narrowed his eyes and said, Haha, yes, then I'll ask senior brother to help senior sister me clean up my house. Yume covered her mouth and laughed. Chapter 15, Master, what's the matter with you wearing my clothes? Senior sister, you're acting so venomously nowadays, aren't you afraid that you won't have the face to see your master in the future? Elder brother isn't so bad, although I'm a bit more brutal, but how many lives have I killed? Unlike senior brother, you killed thousands of cultivators in just one battle. If master knew about this, he would definitely praise you. Elder sister, remember, more deeds will lead to death. Elder brother, then you must also remember that people are doing what the heavens are doing. If people don't take you in, sooner or later the heavens will take you in. On top of the mountain, Xie and Yume went back and forth, their lips and swords at odds with each other. An aura of the true realm emanated from the two of them, constantly rumbling against each other. Yan Xingxing was sandwiched in the middle, squeezed to death by the pressure of the two's breath, his face constantly trembling furiously as he screamed in agony. Stop it! Finally, Yan Xingxing couldn't help himself and took a deep breath to roar. Is any of Master's 7 disciples any good? What's there to fight about? I say, 5th senior sister, wasn't it the 4th senior brother who accidentally killed one of your faces back then? It's been so many years since then, is it necessary to hold a grudge until now? And 4th senior brother, didn't 5th senior sister give you a magic treasure to destroy just to get back at you? Tell me, what magic treasure do you fancy in this world? I'll go and steal one for you, won't that be the end of it? The last sentence. You two are arguing, can you go to the side and argue? Consider my feelings? I can't hold my head in the middle. With Yan Xingxing after a hearty outburst. Yume and Xie were slightly stunned, and only then did they realize that Yan Xingxing had already been squeezed by the duo's breath, his face turning purple, so they couldn't help but let out a sarcastic dry laugh. The two of them had no choice but to collect their breath at the same time, glaring viciously at each other, then simultaneously looking away from each other. Only then did Yan Xingxing let out a long sigh of relief, wiping the sweat from his forehead and shaking his head with a bitter smile. Back then, when the 7 of us left from the master, we made an appointment to come to this Shaowei mountain to get together every year, but as a result, fewer and fewer people are coming now, and all of them don't take this seriously, so by now there are only 3 of us left to come, so let's argue less. Hear this. Xie couldn't help but narrow his eyes, his face grimacing. Those who didn't come are all traitors to the division, those who deceived their masters and destroy their ancestors, sooner or later, I'll have to kill them all. Yume rarely disliked him, and between her slim and slender 5 fingers, strips of red silk that looked like swimming snakes emerged, gulping out a cold aura. Without master teacher, there would be no present for us. Back then, we made an appointment to leave the Qingxian Taoist temple to go out and break into the world for our master, and now it seems that there are already people who have forgotten this oath. Since that's the case, then in the future, I won't be blamed for seeing them acting on behalf of their master and flaying them. Cold light flashed in Yume's eyes, and a monstrous hostility radiated from that delicate face. Yan Xingxing sighed lightly at the sight, not saying anything more, only to suddenly turn his words around and ask, do you guys think that Master's cultivation is really ruined? Yume frowned slightly and said, back then, the failure of Master's tribulation and the destruction of his Tao foundation was something that everyone could see for themselves, so how could it still be a fake? Xie, on the other hand, seemed to have thought of something as he slowly narrowed his eyes and spoke, Senior Yan, the reason why you are asking is because of what happened in Yunzhou a few days ago? Yan Xingxing hurriedly nodded, that's right. Second senior brother has been staying in the central state, preparing to unify all the demonic sects in the central state. How could he have suddenly appeared in the cloud state? But if it wasn't second senior brother, then who would have appeared in Yunzhou? Under the heavens, the only ones who specialize in the great darkness demon technique are second senior brother and master teacher. So, you suspect that it was the master who disguised himself as the second senior brother in order to conceal his identity? Xie took over the conversation, and then his eyes flickered as he said, this matter is indeed a bit bizarre. The spiders below me have been observing the situation of the demon sect, and it is true that during this recent period of time, second senior brother has never left the central state. Good. You even spied on your second senior brother? Yume raised her eyebrows and looked at Xie with a cold smile. Xie didn't reply, but instead looked up into the boundless long sky and fell into deep thought. It wasn't until a long time had passed that Xie said, speaking of which, we haven't gone back to see master teacher since we left, have we? I think it's time to go back and meet master teacher. Go back? How can we go back with our current status? Bring trouble to master? Yume shook her head disdainfully. Xie looked towards Yan Xingxing and said with a faint smile, 7th senior brother, you're the best at the art of camouflage, so you'll make a trip back on our behalf to get close to master teacher. Remember, this time when you go back, it's best not to alarm the master and not let him know it's you. Ha! Yan Xingxing was stunned. A few moments later, the 3 of them chatted for a while longer, and after no one else arrived at Little Y Mountain, they left. What the 3 didn't realize was this. Thumbs up. Suddenly, a swarm of trees whipped aside and the wind gusted. Countless black crows rushed out from the middle of the woods, covering the sky and cutting off the sun and moon. The group of crows then gathered together in midair and transformed into an unruffled, heroic black-haired man who landed where the 3 had been standing before. The black-haired man first glanced at the distant Yanqingxing trio, then turned back to the direction of Yunzhou, pinching his brows and letting out a long sigh. Immediately, he smiled helplessly and bitterly. I say, master, what kind of a thing is it for you to wear my clothes? Qingxian Taoist Temple, back of the mountain. A thick fog obscured all view of the interior. In the center of the back mountain, a white-shirted figure sat cross-legged with its eyes closed. As he inhaled, the great sun-divine sunlight steamed like fire, distorting the void around him, and it was as if all the aura of heaven and earth had been drained in an instant, surging into his physical body. When he exhaled, countless turbid chi was returned to heaven and earth. I don't know how much time has passed. Ning Chuan, who looked like a statue, slowly opened his eyes. An aura that was far too powerful compared to before instantly spread out in all directions with Ning Chuan at the center. 7th level of void transformation. Ning Chuan felt the surging cultivation within his body and took a deep breath. The ethereal wood-green chi contained in the spirit medicine of the 5 great sects, in these few days, made his cultivation cross 6 levels in a row, directly from the 1st level of void transformation, a step to the 7th level of void transformation. Boo! He gently gripped his 5 fingers, and the void around him was instantly like glass, with a crack appearing. Is this the power of the 7th level of void transformation? A smirk surfaced at the corner of Ning Chuan's mouth. In this moment, he felt it. This is not a power that exists only in the memories of its predecessor. It wasn't the ephemeral power of nothingness that came from that talisman. This is truly his power. Next moment, Ning Chuan looked towards the Dantian Divine Sea inwardly, and his face suddenly rejoiced once again, only to see that in his Dantian Divine Sea, a tiny verdant green tree had taken root and poked its head out of the seed. Chapter 16. You are not worthy of being my father. Gathering the underpinnings of the 5 top powers of the cloud state, the ethereal wood aura that was so vast that it was unimaginable to ordinary people finally took root within Ning Chuan's Dantian as the 5 elements of the wood genus of the great Tao seed. The power of the 5 elements has become one of them, and there are also a lot of weapons and magic treasures that can be transformed into Gengjin Qi. As expected, copying a family was the shortcut to riches, and at least for the time being, Ning Chuan didn't need to worry about resources. After the 7th level of void transformation, Ning Chuan didn't continue his seclusion, but instead walked out of the back of the mountain and appeared in the Qingxian Taoist temple for the first time since the destruction of the 5 major forces in Yunzhou. Yu Ming, real person sitting on the wheelchair, beside the small Yu Fu sitting on the ground on his knees, the small face is tense, a breath with a characteristic rhythm, apparently the breathing method of the immovable Ming Wang. As for Yu Chunjinren, a simple man, he was flinging his bladder, grunting and puffing as he lifted a large green stone, his gnarled flesh reddish and steaming with a slight white mist. According to the words of the master back then, Yuchen, this kid was born with a brain missing a string, the sky has a surplus but not enough to make up for it, and the person has a loss but not enough to make up for it. Refining God's absorption was a difficult task for the Yu Chun realist, while forging the body to polish his strength was incomparably suited to him who was born with divine strength. Shidoshi. Realist Yu Ming was the first to see Ning Chuan, who was wearing a white shirt, and smiled as he greeted him. When the remaining 2 heard this, they also stopped, with the same smile on their faces, and opened their mouths to greet them. Ning Chuan nodded his head and smiled, his back to the evening daylight, his body slender and his divine splendor restrained. In a trance, it was as if senior brothers Yu Ming and Yu Chun saw that the heavenly genius who had pressed down on the entire Song Yuan realm back then had returned. Senior brother, Huanhuan, has spent the past 2 days. After coming back to her senses, a slightly embarrassed look appeared on the face of Yu Mingjinren, and she paused before continuing to speak. Ever since the Su family's affair, she locked herself in her chambers and didn't come out for 3 whole days. Why don't you just go check it out? The Yu Chun real person on the side wanted to say something, but in the end, he still didn't look away and pursed his lips. The honest man with no gutter in his heart put his heart all over his face. He didn't want his senior brother to go and he didn't know how to ask. There's no need, those who cultivate can't starve for 3 or 5 days. Who knew that Ning Chuan was waving his hand, his tone indifferent, as if the person he was talking about was not his daughter? Ugh! Realist Yu Ming sighed, and since Ning Chuan had said so, it was no good to continue mentioning it again. Clunk! Just as the 3 of them were talking, the door to Ning Huanhuan's bedchamber suddenly opened. Ning Huanhuan was cloaked in hair, her eyes were red, and her face carried a bone-deep hatred as she stared tightly at Ning Chuan, gritting her teeth and saying, "Why did you do this?" The 5 forces led by the Su family were annihilated in a matter of moments, with only one true Gu Third Havoc Realm ancestor of the Xin Bottle Dao sect fleeing in a sorry state into that barren land in the northern plains. The entire Song Yuan realm believed that the one who had committed such an extermination in Yunzhou was none other than Ning Chuan's second disciple, demon sect master Wei Tianhe. Ning Huanhuan cleverly thought that Ning Chuan was behind all the things Wei Tianhe did. As for the purpose, it was of course to break up her and Mr. Su. No wonder you stopped making me practice hard. Don't stop me and Mr. Su yet. So you did all of this to stall for time, waiting for that big devil Wei Tianhe to come to Yunzhou, and then get rid of him once and for all. Ning Huanhuan's clothes were disheveled, and she stared at Ning Chuan closely as she walked away and spoke in a cold voice. At the loss, I was worried about you in my heart before, thinking that it wasn't me who did the wrong thing. The results prove me wrong. You are an extremely selfish, cruel and heartless person. I won't forgive you, never, never in my life. You vile devil, you don't deserve to be my father. For a young girl in love, her lover's family is wiped out overnight, and the murderer behind the scene is actually her own father. Remorse, chagrin, resentment, shame. All sorts of emotions had accompanied Ning Huanhuan for 3 days, and when she saw Ning Chuan, she vented them out regardless. Huanhuan. Stinky girl, what are you talking about? Yu Ming and Yu Chun both chided out at the same time, but as for little Yu Fu, he didn't even look at Ning Huanhuan, completely treating her as a stranger. Beggar was born and is still a child, who is good to him he understands in his heart, and has not yet realized what it means to love the house. What are you going to do? Ning Chuan stepped forward and looked condescendingly at Ning Huanhuan in front of him, with no joy or sadness in his eyes. He was not the original body, he would not spoil this rebellious girl. I'll kill you. Ning Huanhuan's eyes flickered with tears, and between her waving her hands, the 7 treasures red damask at her waist flew up in the air, wrapped in raging aura, and rolled straight towards Ning Chuan. Humph. Ning Chuan had his hands behind his back, and with a cold snort, the 7 treasures red damask was instantly fixed in the air, and the wrapped aura was like a fresh breeze, only blowing up a strand of hair around his ears. A mere 7th level of god nurturing and a magic treasure that the maids can't even look at, and you want to kill me? Ning Chuan's voice was as indifferent as ever, and in the turn of his mind, Ning Huanhuan had already flown backward and fell onto the steps of the Qinghan Taoist temple. Shidoshi. Yu Ming Jinjin was finally unable to bear it, and only then did he speak. Huanhuan doesn't know any better, don't hurt her. I'm to blame for this. Ning Chuan sighed quietly. For the past 10 years, I have only focused on her cultivation, hoping that in the future I would be able to gain a foothold in the vast Song Yuan realm, but I have forgotten the fundamentals of cultivation. Throughout the 30 years of the original body, it could be said that it was extremely brilliant, stepping on 10,000 people and being called an invincible person. But cultivation to the end, forget to cultivate the heart, otherwise even if the initial failure of the robbery will not fall into a Taoist heartbroken, obliterated the end of the people. Kill me if you can. Ning Huanhuan looked as if she would rather die than give in, holding her head high and staring at Ning Chuan with a deadly stare, saying word for word, if you don't kill me today, I will definitely join the great Luo divine sect so that my mother can avenge me. Help yourself. Ning Chuan nodded, the expression on his face not changing in the slightest. Hearing this, Ning Huanhuan braced herself to climb up, retrieved the 7 treasure red damask, and rushed out of the Qinghan Taoist temple without looking back. Senior brother, she is your daughter after all. Yu Ming Jinren closed his eyes and sighed, then said, silly spring, why don't you go and chase Huanhuan back? I'm not going. Like a child who was gambling, realist Yu Chun turned his head and continued to fight with that big green stone. Ning Chuan smiled indifferently, Senior, don't waste that effort, no one can stop her from going to the great Luo divine sect if she wants to. It's always her daughter, death is definitely not death. But the results were no better. The last half of the sentence, Ning Chuan added in his mind. Tantai Qinghan was preparing to marry the young lord of the Taishu Dao land, and if Ning Huanhuan jumped out and called out to her mother at that time, the scene would be extremely exciting. According to Tantai Qinghan's nature, if Ning Huanhuan came to his door, he would either send someone to send him back or find a random place to hide. As for Ning Huanhuan's fantasized life as a rich second-generation immortal cultivator, that was something that was bound to be impossible. Chapter 17, The Sikong Family's Appointment. Ning Chuan lifted the hem of his white shirt, and little Yu Fu had already moved a stool out from the hall and placed it next to realist Yu Ming. Aside from realist Yu Ming, no one else had much of a reaction to Ning Huanhuan leaving in anger. Senior brother, the cultivation world is treacherous, what if that girl Huanhuan? Realist Yu Ming looked at the door of the Taoist temple, a trace of intolerance flashing in his eyes. Elder brother, Ning Chuan propped one hand on his chin and waved the other, saying, children have their own paths, and her future is all of her own choosing. Forget about her, I'm hungry. As realist Yuchen pushed realist Yumming to the kitchen, the snuffy aroma of braised pork, a tradition of the Qinghan Taoist temple, gradually filled the air. After eating and drinking, the sky was darkening, but not completely dark, and the remnants of the flaming clouds in the distant sky glowed with a faint golden light, spilling over the entire land of Yunzhou. Ning Chuan stood in the courtyard, the verdant mountains reflected under his eyes. As the last trace of daylight dispersed, the rolling green hills were completely shrouded in darkness, and the city of Gusu, at the foot of the mountains in the distance, was lit up with a candle flame, as if another sun had risen. Although Yunzhou was not as poor as the northern plains, with ferocious mountains and beasts everywhere, it could be called equally barren for cultivation. The overall aura is not rich enough, resulting in slow cultivation speed as well as few heavenly treasures. The cultivation environment is more than one step worse than the kind of rich places in the central state. Ning Chuan was calculating what to do with his cultivation path after that. The spirit medicine scavenged from the Su family and the other 5 forces had been turned into an ethereal wood sapling within the divine sea of the Dantian as much as possible, and there was also a batch of divine weapons that could provide the Gung Jin Qi, but it wouldn't last long. The 5 elements were mutually exclusive, and if one wanted to evolve all of them into the seed of the Great Tao, the resources needed would be massive. It could be said that while choosing such a cultivation method and stepping onto the path of invincibility at the same level, Ning Chuan had completely become a walking gold-swallowing beast. While Ning Chuan was in his reverie, he suddenly glanced slightly sideways as a haze of light flashed across the sky in the distance, and in the next second it landed at the entrance to the Taoist temple. Came a middle-aged man, dressed in sophisticated decent xianyi, cuffs embroidered gold thread, elegant and noble, extraordinary temperament. Dare I ask, is this the Qingxian Taoist temple's Guan Master Ning? The middle-aged man courteously arched his hand, his waist followed, and pursed his lips, giving the impression that he was a little nervous. Linford had to be nervous. The person in front of him was once an invincible person in the entire Song Yuan realm, a supreme existence of the true Goten tribulation realm. Though the latter's crossing went wrong, and the entire Song Yuan realm almost sat on the fact that he was no longer in his former glory. However, 3 days ago, the 5 major forces in Yunzhou led by the Su family coveted Ning Chuan's secret techniques and made a secret move, and in a matter of moments, they were uprooted by the blood crow demon Monarch, which was truly appalling. Things past 3 days, some things were also slowly found out. About Ning Chuan that year is not really the heart of the Taoist broken, cultivation fell, also renewed disputes. Even if Ning Chuan truly obliterated the crowd, Wei Tianhe's outburst was signaling that this once invincible person hadn't reached the point where anyone could take him. Ning Chuan also has disciples, 7 whole ones. The Sikong family? Ning Chuan, who was standing in the courtyard, swept a glance at Lin Fu and recognized the identity of the visitor. Master Guan has good eyesight. Lin Fu straightened up and spoke with a smile. Today's door-gripping disturbance is my young master's order to discuss important matters with Master Guan. Come in for a minute. Ning Chuan nodded and turned to stride back into the great hall. A few moments later, the two of them took their seats in the hall, and Ning Chuan looked casual, leaning against the back of his chair and crossing his arms in his lap, his eyes slightly closed. Lin Fu, however, was much more nervous, and even his buttocks only dared to fall halfway onto the chair. Let's have something straight, Ning Chuan spoke indifferently, without raising his eyelids, and continued, my Qingxian Taoist temple is declining, and I can't compare to the hallowed Sikong clan. The Sikong family, one of the top 3 families in Yunzhou. Unlike the Su family and other forces, these 3 families were the existences that could properly dominate the cloud state. You're welcome, goddess of mercy. Lin Fu reluctantly smiled, sitting here only to feel that all the strength of the divine journey is completely useless, and even speech must be considered again and again, after a pause before saying, the goddess of mercy knows the secret realm of the Nining Mountains? These words caused Ning Chuan to raise his head, pondering before slowly nodding. According to the original body's experience, there was indeed such an ancient secret realm in Yunzhou, and it was also one of the few opportunities in the vast Yunzhou. Then Lin Fu stated his reason for coming. He was actually a steward of the Sikong family, and his master was the family's 3rd young master, Sikong Changtian. He had only come here because Sikong Changtian had seen Ning Chuan's insights and his status as a once invincible person, and wanted to invite him to join him in exploring that ancient mysterious realm. Of course, there must have been the influence of the tragic case of the extermination of the 5 major forces in Yunzhou 3 days ago. Young Master Changkon said that as long as the Guan Master is willing to help out, the payment is all negotiable. Lin Fu had sincerity on his face, and his eyes were fixed on Ning Chuan. But for this, Ning Chuan is a bit disdainful, said half a day to come to a pay good negotiation, shelving this cake? Ning Chuan sat in the chair in a good manner, his fingers tapping on the knob, making a duck-duck sound. Finally, Lin Fu didn't dare to stare at Ning Chuan anymore in this silent atmosphere, and instead averted his gaze. I promise. As Lin Fu's gaze sagged, Ning Chuan's voice rang out, when you arrive at the entrance to the secret realm, pay 3 Earth-ranked divine soldiers as a deposit first, and when it's done, I want 50% of the proceeds from the entire secret realm. This is not a mean offer. Ancient secret realm want to enter the general need for credentials, this thing is certainly the Sikong family to provide, and not yet in the collection of deposit, after the incident but also 50% of the proceeds, more or less a little aggressive. However, cooperation, are talking down, this is Ning Chuan as a modern person crossing the past inherent thinking, the lion's mouth, behind the good to continue to discuss down the road. Good, I agree on behalf of the young master. Who knew that Lin Fu only hesitated slightly before agreeing, which caused Ning Chuan to be slightly stunned for an instant, and then as if he had thought of something, he nodded without moving. Lin Fu followed up by making an appointment with Ning Chuan to meet up under the Nining Mountains 10 days later, and then quickly left while the night was still young. Ning Chuan sat alone in the hall, his eyes flickering. In his original body's memories, there were quite a few ancient divine weapons in this secret realm. If Ning Chuan was able to take down as much as he could and absorb the Gangjin Qi inside, by that time, condensing the Gangjin Great Tao Seed and pushing his realm to the peak of the Divine Journey realm wouldn't even be a problem. In addition, according to memory, the old family head of the Sikong family is afraid that his death is imminent, and the 3 sons under his command are all trying to find ways to compete for that position. Whether it was a family trial or not, or whether that Sikong Changtian had his eye on some treasure in the secret realm or not, it didn't matter to Ning Chuan. What Ning Chuan wanted was those divine weapons and the ancient mysteries, or to be precise, a massive amount of Gangjin Qi. Chapter 18, A Chance Encounter in Pingzheng City. The next day, Ning Chuan got up early and talked to realist Yuming and the others about going to the Jiuyin Mountain mystical realm appointment in 10 days. Senior brother, the Sikong family is not that easy to deal with. I'm afraid that this trip is going to have many ups and downs. Realist Yuming's face wore an obvious look of worry. Master Goddess is invincible, how could he possibly be in danger? Little Yufu's face was serious as he waved his fleshy little fist, sort of cheering Ning Chuan on. Ning Chuan smiled and rubbed little Yufu's head, then spoke, Senior brother doesn't have to worry, since I dared to promise, I'm naturally certain. Little Yufu, I've already passed on his immovable Ming Wang Sutra, it's you and third senior brother. Ning Chuan paused for a moment and glanced outside the Taoist temple. This simpleton, Yu Chunjinjin, had already gone to the back of the mountain to cut firewood early in the morning. After withdrawing his gaze, Ning Chuan smiled, I thought about it all last night, and have already chosen your respective cultivation techniques for you. Before the Qingxian Taoist temple came into existence without Ning Chuan, it was only a small and inconspicuous Taoist temple in Yunzhou, and its fame was only circulated around Gusu City. Cultivation methods and divine abilities were all ordinary and ordinary. Ning Chuan also did not know what the original body thought, wasting 10 years in the Taoist temple, one heart is only on that Ning Huanhuan. As for Yu Ming and Yu Chun, two people, still practicing the original thing. Changing feats? Realist Yu Ming was visibly surprised for a moment before saying, Yu Chun and I are so old, I'm afraid it's too late to change our techniques. Besides, Qingxian Taoist temple, someone has to repair what was left behind by the previous generations. Senior brother, I was wrong in the past, Ning Chuan spoke in a low tone, stroking little Yufu's head as he slowly said, but now, I'm the Guan master. Ning Chuan, just 4 words, let Yu Ming real estate. I stored up fog, raised his cuffs to wipe, no good mood, said, early in the morning, the wind and sand is also too heavy some. Seeing this scene, Ning Chuan also sighed, the original body taught disciples and daughters, but only did not have the slightest inclination towards his elder brother and junior. It was only because the original body believed in the supremacy of talent, he himself was so. And he also demanded that those around him be so, with only Ning Huanhuan being the exception. The next 3 days, Ning Chuan passed to the Yu Ming Jinjin Tian rank middle grade technique Flying Leaf Divine Power. After the completion of the idea of picking flowers and flying leaves can also kill the enemy thousands of miles away, the power is infinite, but also fit him now the situation of mobility problems. As for the Yu Chun real person, Ning Chuan chose a heavenly lower grade body forging technique Barbarian Devil Cow Body. She can be transformed into an ancient barbarian devil cow. Picking the stars and taking the moon is easy. After everything was done, Ning Chuan went on the road alone early in the morning of the 4th day to go to the Sikong family's appointment. The Naining Mountains were located in the northern border of the Cloud State, bordering the Smoke State, and it was a long way from Gusu City, almost 100,000 miles after a rough calculation. If you go further north through the Smoky State, you will arrive at the center of the Tsong Yuan realm, the Central State. And the Great Luo Divine Sect was the one that stood in the Central State and shook the entire Tsong Yuan realm. Ning Chuan was sometimes in the air, sometimes falling on foot along the way. That was how he was back then, walking step by step from the Cloud State to the Central State, and ultimately making a name for himself in that place, and of course ending up there in regret. This time, when he set out on the road again, perhaps influenced by his original body, Ning Chuan was more or less saddened. 2 days later, Ning Chuan was not far from the Naining Mountains, and at the end of the official road, a city suddenly appeared. In the past, when he encountered a city, Ning Chuan always chose to go around in the air, but this time, he wanted to go into the city to take a stroll and take a rest. It was still early for the appointment with the Sikong clan, so Ning Chuan wasn't in a hurry. Pingjiang City. A large unknown river runs around the city, and it is rumored that an immortal once subdued a dragon that was making waves here and calmed the flooding of the river, which gave it its name. Ning Chuan was dressed in a white tunic, his hair casually tied behind his head like a scholar, walking all the way from the city gates towards the busiest section. Stop! Little beggar, how dare you steal from my senior brother? What a bear's heart! There was a sudden clamor coming from the front, and the crowd surrounding the blockade caused Ning Chuan to stop at the side to watch. At the entrance of the restaurant, a group of 7 or 8 sect disciples wearing navy blue brocade clothes with red clouds embroidered on their collars and left chests were surrounding a pimply-faced beggar in the center, pushing him around recklessly. Ning Chuan swept a glance, his brows furrowed for a moment, then stretched. Even though the beggar's head was hanging low, his face was covered by dirt he had encountered somewhere, and his body was tattered and torn, almost unclothed. The scent of his body was more than familiar to Ning Chuan. Ning Huanhuan had the strength of the 7th level of the nurturing spirit anyways, and for some reason, now she looked as if she was a beggar. Alas, those fallen cloud sect scumbags have entered the city again. Keep your voice down, in a 1,000-mile radius, there's only one cultivation sect, the Sunset Cloud sect, who dares to mess with them? It's just a second-rate sect, there's no tiger in the mountain, the monkey is just the king. Alas, let's go, being targeted by the disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect, that beggar will be lightly teased and beaten up, or he will die. The chatter of the surrounding crowd caused Ning Chuan to subconsciously clench his palms, a cold light flashing in his eyes. I didn't steal from you. Ning Huanhuan shook her head, her voice full of stubbornness. You've all already checked out and left. I just... Nonsense, labor spent the money, it's labor's to eat or not to eat. If you eat it, you're stealing. A disciple of the Sunset Cloud sect sneered and pushed Ning Huanhuan, and the surrounding brothers and sisters burst into laughter. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, the Sunset Cloud sect is the sky. Over time, these disciples are arrogant and domineering, originally idle nothing, just happened to run into Ning Huanhuan, just to tease a little fun. I didn't. Or had Ning Huanhuan received such an aggravation, raising her head for a split second, her eyes reddened, and with spiritual energy drumming around her body, she offered up the 7 treasures red damask. Seeing Ning Huanhuan trying to make a move, the disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect first froze, then laughed even louder. It's just a matter of nourishing your spirit, and you still want to resist? The disciple in the lead's hand was filled with spiritual energy and easily grabbed the red damask in his hands. Then 2 more disciples stepped out, one on the left and one on the right, and grabbed Ning Huanhuan. Get off me! My mother is Tantai Qinghan, the goddess of the great Luo divine sect. Ning Huanhuan twisted her body, closing her eyes as she roared out these words, 2 lines of clear tears falling as she clenched her pale lips. Laughing my ass off, listen senior brothers, she said her mother is the Tantai goddess. Ha! What kind of person is Tantai goddess? How could she have a beggarly daughter? The disciple who grabbed the 7 treasures red damask let out a loud laugh, and then immediately passed the red damask in front of Ning Huanhuan's eyes and said in a cold voice, who are you bluffing? If your mother were Tantai Qinghan, would she give you a crappy yellow-ranked magic treasure? Hearing these words, it was as if a bolt of lightning crossed Ning Huanhuan's mind, and her face suddenly turned white as she hurriedly argued, impossible. Mother loves me so much, how could she possibly give me a lousy yellow-ranked magic treasure? Chapter 19, It Can't Be him. In the cultivation world, magic treasures are divided into 4 orders and 12 grades of heaven, earth, basil, and yellow. In addition, there are holy products and immortal products on top of the heavenly order, and even the legendary divine weapons, only that ordinary people have never heard of it in their whole life. Ning Huanhuan's 7 treasures red damask was only a yellow-ranked magic treasure, something that couldn't even be used to reward a maid. Listening to the laughter of the surrounding disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect, as well as those watching from a short distance away pointing from time to time, Ning Huanhuan couldn't hold it in any longer, and her tears fell in big drops. For the first time, Ning Huanhuan went out of the Taoist temple under the capriciousness. Ning Huanhuan firstly had no body, and couldn't even solve the problem of food and drink, and she held herself as a cultivator, and couldn't do the thing of bullying the mundane people. To put it bluntly, he was raised in the palm of his hand from a young age. His father was a once renowned invincible person, and his mother was the divine daughter of the great Luo divine sect. Coupled with Ning Chuan's coddling since childhood, when had Ning Huanhuan ever been wronged? Not to mention the perils of the cultivation world, these things Ning Chuan wouldn't even let her touch the slightest bit in the first place. Look at that, crybaby actually. The disciple of the Sunset Cloud sect holding the 7 treasures red damask in his hand reached out and cupped Ning Huanhuan's chin. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, and he said with some surprise, I can't imagine that this dead girl's appearance is still quite iconic. TSK. Senior brother, why don't we bring her back and hand her over to the elders, and when she's well trained, she might not be a good cauldron. A nearby disciple voiced a suggestion, and the rest nodded. If the Sunset Cloud sect was a real and famous sect, the disciples below wouldn't have done the thing of insulting people on the street. To put it bluntly, the cultivation world is always about strength, and if the fist is big enough, what's the difference between the right way and the devil's way? We all know that Blood Crow Demon Monarch Wei Tian had destroyed 5 major forces in a row in Yunzhou, but we didn't see anyone shouting to get rid of the demons and defend the way, and then puffing and puffing to go after them? Ning Huanhuan had been a bit dumbfounded, and for the first time, she felt that the outside world was so dangerous. This was not Gusa City, nor was it the Qingxin Taoist temple where she could fly around, and a slow despair had begun to rise in her heart. Just as the disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect were about to take away Ning Huanhuan, Ning Chuan always looked away. With a slight movement of the fingers in his sleeve, a strand of ethereal wood green gas wrapped around his fingertips and disappeared into the void, and in another blink of an eye, it had already grown as if it were a swimming dragon and appeared above the heads of those disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect. Before the disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect could react, the powerful aura crashed down in a brutal manner, as if it was like dropping a boulder in a calm lake. Spiritual pressure swept across, the crowd watching the scene was impacted and tumbled over, and those disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect fainted without even being able to hum a single sound. The only person still standing in the field at the moment was the pudgy Ning Huanhuan. After secretly striking out, Ning Chuan turned around and walked away, a white shirt seemingly slow but actually fast, as if shrinking into an inch, disappearing around the corner of the street. However, Ning Chuan's white back still fell into Ning Huanhuan's eyes. With a glimpse, Ning Huanhuan couldn't help but remember the familiar figure in her mind. How to look at that back figure, how it looked like that nasty father of her own. Impossible, how could that unbelievably hypocritical guy save himself? He can't wait to die sooner rather than later. If he really died, that asshole wouldn't shed a single tear. In an instant, Ning Huanhuan mentally dismissed her earlier thoughts, and just assumed that she had just been dazzled and misread the situation. After looking around at the fainted disciples of the Sunset Cloud sect, Ning Huanhuan picked up her 7 treasures red damask and bit her lip before continuing to head out of the city in the direction of the great Luo divine sect. Ning Huanhuan firmly believes from the bottom of her heart that no matter what, her mother still loves her, and that she left her behind in the first place because of that hateful father. Pengjiang City had a little-known steamed fish that was a specialty of the big river next to it, and rumor had it that this fish, because it lived in the place where the Jiao dragons had fallen, carried a trace of dragon's qi, which was very beneficial to cultivators. Over time, no one knows if the rumors are true or not, but the fame of this steamed fish is really fired up. Ning Chuan passed by this place and naturally made a point to try it. But the final result was not as rumored, just the ordinary kind of spiritual fish that contains spiritual qi. For mundane people is naturally a tonic, but the cultivator into the mouth, too unusual just. Sure enough, in which world cannot escape the word marketing, Ning Chuan is also considered in that Sun Yuan world to see some shadow of the pre-crossing. Ning Chuan traveled all the way to the mountains, and after a few days, he was already close to the Nining Mountains, and since the morning time, there was a haze passing overhead from time to time. It was no secret that the opening of the ancient secret realm of the Nining Mountain was not a secret, and the clouds in the cloud state were surging, and it was unknown how many powerful people were converging here. Even the smoky state next door, and the more distant central state, I'm afraid there are people rushing here. Ning Chuan looked up as the powerful people from all sides either swept high into the sky on their magical treasures, rode majestic divine beast mounts, or sacrificed their flowing divine chariots. To describe it in one sentence, it is like the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each showing their own abilities. Walking to a hilltop, Ning Chuan temporarily stopped, and against the clear wind at the top of the hill, he could see from afar the huge dragon of the mountain range that seemed to be lying on the ground in the sky. As the Nining mountain range that separated the cloud state and the smoke state, it was naturally not an unusual small mountain range, spanning around 1,000 miles, and even more than 10,000 miles in length. On the official road in the rear, Yan Xingxing's face showed a rare look of exhaustion. However, after seeing the white figure standing with his hands on top of the mountain in the distance, he let out another breath. The Thousand Faces Thief Monarch, nicknamed the Divine Traveling Taipa, had a cultivation level that had reached the late Divine Traveling stage, and had also vaguely touched the peak of the 9th Divine Traveling stage. But even then, there was no such thing as running over 100,000 miles in a few days. Thinking of this, Yan Xingxing pursed her lips, her heart more or less aggravated. After meeting with his senior brothers and sisters on that day at Shaowei Mountain, Yan Xingxing hoofed it from Zhengzhou to Qingxian Daoist Temple in Yunzhou. Who knew that when he arrived at the place he had pounced, Ning Chuan was not in the view? Luckily, Yan Xingxing had heard Yun Ming and the others gossiping and knew that Ning Chuan had gone to the Nining Mountains, intending to enter that ancient secret realm. So the titular thousand-faced thief could only turn around and come back, hoofing it all the way, finally rushing to see Ning Chuan's back before the secret realm began. Master Ah, it's not easy for little apprentice brother to make this journey. Yan Xingxing let out a sigh of emotion, and then executed his best disguise technique, transforming into the appearance of a middle-aged man. While rushing towards where Ning Chuan was, Yan Xingxing took a talisman seal to enter the ancient mysterious realm in his hand. Apart from getting close to his master and seeing how he was doing, Yan Xingxing wanted to protect Ning Chuan more than anything else this time. After all, the ancient mysteries were incredibly dangerous, and no one knew what dangers were in them, and it was still a toss-up as to whether or not Ning Chuan had recovered his strength by now. Chapter 20, Lifting a Stone and Stoning Your Own Foot. May I ask if Senior is Senior Ning of the Qingxian Daoist Temple? The middle-aged man that Yan Xingxing had transformed into had a careful look on his face, and in his eyes there were 3 parts anticipation, 3 parts apprehension, 3 parts hesitation plus 1 part fervor. The gesture was a good way to play the part of a somewhat fanatical fan who suddenly encounters a longtime idol on the street and then braves the urge to go up and say hello. Ning Chuan at the top of the mountain turned around and just looked at Yan Xingxing with indifferent eyes, not opening his mouth to speak, nor did he make any unnecessary movements. In fact, Ning Chuan had discovered Yan Xingxing a long time ago, and had even seen him transform into the middle-aged man in front of him with his own eyes under the shroud of his divine sense. Even if he didn't see it, Ning Chuan could still recognize it. After all, Yan Xingxing's strength was all his doing. Looking at Ning Chuan's appearance, Yan Xingxing's heart drummed and her expression was somewhat unnatural. His own master, he wouldn't be able to see through his disguise with a single glance, would he? Such thoughts inevitably popped up in Yan Xingxing's mind, and he felt that some white-haired sweat began to emerge from his back as well, and his heart was even more of a feeling of being in a state of shock. It's me. Just when Yan Xingxing was about to lose his tautness, Ning Chuan clenched a smile at the corner of his mouth and slowly nodded his head. Phew! Yan Xingxing's heart let out a long breath. It looked like his master had not recognized him. It is also, that year, after the robbery, the master's strength fell greatly. Now since there is no need for that year, everything is just worrying about the sky. My juniors have long heard of the great name of my predecessor, and it is indeed a great fortune that I have been able to see the real face today. Yan Xingxing softly complimented him, and what he said was not a lie, and then continued, Dare I ask Senior, is this visit here for the Nining Mountain Mystic Realm? Nice. The late generation has the audacity to invite the Senior to travel with him, so that he can ask for some advice along the way. I hope the Senior will agree. As he spoke, Yan Xingxing bent over and arched his hand, his attitude looking sincere. Ning Chuan swept a glance at the young apprentice in front of him and nodded with a borrowed nod, walking down the hill first and returning to the main road. At this moment, Ning Chuan was somewhat amused in his heart, but inexplicably felt some emotion, and did not bother to reveal Yan Xingxing's identity. Along the way, the two appeared to be walking side by side, but in reality, Yan Xingxing was half a body length behind Ning Chuan, more like his entourage of followers. Elder, there's something that the late generation doesn't know whether to ask or not. Just say what you have to say. Yan Xingxing's step slowed down a bit as he took a deep look at his master's back before asking. Senior Ning was once as good as the sun, and had even touched the rumored half-saint realm. But the sky is not beautiful. That year on the Kanglan River, the foundation of the great Tao was damaged, the heart of the Tao was shattered, and the cultivation was in a steep decline. Speaking here, Yan Xingxing paused for a moment and carefully glanced at Ning Chuan, seeing that he didn't have much of a reaction before continuing. From an invincible person at the absolute top of the Zhenwu 10 threats realm to a silent and nameless little Guan master right now, does Senior Ning feel the change? Upon hearing this from his young disciple, Ning Chuan's expression remained flat, as if he wasn't referring to himself in his words. Ning Chuan walked forward while deliberating for a moment before opening his mouth. The world, if it is difficult to gain, it is not easy to lose. If it is easy to gain, it is also easy to lose. Gain and loss come from the margins, and the mind does not increase or decrease. In just 2 short sentences, Yan Xingxing couldn't help but stop in her tracks, looking at Ning Chuan's back with a distinct surprise. Gain and loss come from the karma, and the mind does not increase or decrease. These 8 words are not related to Ning Chuan in any way. Yan Xingxing still remembered that when he left Qingxian Taoist temple back then, Ning Chuan had already become irritable, smashing things and lashing out in inexplicable fury at every turn. But just a few years had passed, Ning Chuan was even as different as he was at the beginning, and when these words were spoken, it was as if he had returned to the time when he was learning the art at the master's knee. At this moment, Yan Xingxing looked at Ning Chuan again, vaguely feeling that the man in front of him, who had an extremely low cultivation level, was slowly reuniting with the spirited, invincible master of the year. Elder. Senior's state of mind is unrivaled. Yan Xingxing spoke softly, but with real sincerity. At least for now, Ning Chuan no longer looked as disheveled as he did back then, which was ultimately a thing too good to be true. The big stone in Yan Xingxing's heart was considered to have fallen by half, and his face also had more smiles. His eyes turned, and he simply asked, I heard that Senior Ning had taken 7 disciples. I wonder which one is stronger or weaker in the senior's mind, not in terms of cultivation. Nowadays, they can all be famous figures in this Song Yuan realm. Demon Sect Master, Blood Crow Demon Monarch Wei Tianna, Feathered Divine Sect soon to be appointed New Dao Divine Son, Luo Changzong, Red Dust Palace's second Palace Master, Yu Mei, who is known as Red Dust Demoness, and Lord of the Spiderweb that spreads all over the Song Yuan realm, Xie Qingyi. Of course, there's also that thousand-faced thief, God's traveling type of Yan Xingxing. Rumor has it that this person is best at robbing the rich and helping the poor, chivalrous and righteous, coming and going without a trace, quite a chivalrous name. When talking about the other senior brothers or sisters, Yan Xingxing was just a passing remark, but when it came to himself, he complimented them one after another without blushing. Hearing these words, Ning Chuan laughed in his heart, and without stopping his pace, he reached out and waved his hand, to say that 7th disciple of mine, Yan Xingxing, is the most incompetent one of them all. Ha! Elder this. Don't be in a hurry to refute, listen to me finish. Yan Xingxing, this kid, the driller slipping the door to pick the locks, take the sheep by the hand thing, no help from the clan, no forces under the second, do some things that can't be on the stage, say he can't do anything wrong? Yan Xingxing listened to the dumbfounded, but think carefully is also so, counting brothers and sisters, as if he himself mixed the worst right. It's true if Senior says so. Yan Xingxing ended in agreement. Had he known such a thing, he had asked out more than he should have. Now that's a good thing. It's like lifting a rock and stoning yourself. Thinking of this, Yan Xingxing inevitably felt some bitterness in his heart, and appeared sullen on the subsequent road. Ning Chuan only secretly laughed lightly at this, but did not say anything of relief. 7 disciples have very different personalities. The youngest disciple, Yan Xingxing, has wanted to be a warrior since he was a child, and his mentality is also the most optimistic. No matter what troubles him, never overnight, and he doesn't have to pay attention to the mentality problem at all. The two of them slowly moved forward, chatting from time to time, and after half a day they arrived at the bottom of Nining Mountain. The opening of the ancient mysterious realm was imminent, and all parties of cultivators were bustling, and this place seemed like a mundane bazaar, appearing to be bustling with activity. Forces large and small had already taken up positions in advance, stationing camps, patrolling and guarding, and everything seemed to be in order. There is even a lively loose cultivator. Take advantage of this lively energy to sit on the ground, set up stalls, trading some of their own use of heavenly materials and treasures or Pill's secret books. Ning Chuan saw the flag of the Sikon clan from a long distance away, as well as steward Lin Fu, who stood waiting at the entrance of the camp. Chapter 21, The Sword is at War. Ning Chuan stopped, turned his head to look at Yan Xingxing, and spoke, I'm going to travel with the Sikon clan, so let's part ways. In reality, Ning Chuan was also aware that Yan Xingxing could not just obediently leave. The truth was just as Ning Chuan had thought. Yan Xingxing stroked his chin and spoke with a smile, Senior Ning, since Senior is fortunate enough to be traveling with you, this ancient mysteries realm must definitely be entered together as well. After entering the secret realm, the divine weapons and heavenly treasures are secondary, the main thing is that I want to witness the elegance of the seniors with my own eyes. As he said this, Yan Xingxing appropriately revealed a little fanboy look, his eyes blossoming. Only being looked at by a big old man with such eyes, Ning Chuan more or less felt a bit nauseous, and whisking his sleeve, he said, if you're willing to follow, then follow. A few moments later, the two of them, Ning Chuan, had met Lin Fu. Master Ning, third young master has been waiting for quite some time. Lin Fu arched his hand, then reached out and guided them in vain, bringing the two of them into the camp of the Qinghan family. As one of the three top families in Yunzhou, the camp of the Qinghan family was an atmospheric palace, and judging from the aura that filled the air above and the hidden formations, it was most likely a cave-type magic treasure of a not-so-low grade. For a mere third young master who was not favored to be able to carry such a heavy weapon with him, the top-tier family background was truly unimaginable. However, Ning Chuan and the two of them were both well informed, and they calmly followed Lin Fu inside the palace. As soon as he entered, a young man who looked to be in his early 20s greeted him. Qinghan Changtian wore a brocade-colored fancy dress, his body type was a little chubby, and he smiled with a bit of baby fat on his face, giving people an approachable feeling. However, as the third young master of the Qinghan family, Qinghan Changtian's cultivation that can barely reach the level of Tongming is a bit too high. Late Qinghan Changtian, meet Master Ning Huan. What made Ning Chuan slightly surprised was that Qinghan Changtian actually performed a junior salute, and did not have the foppishness of a son of a worldly family on his body. Third young master is polite. Ning Chuan nodded, thinking back to that year, even the old master of the Qinghan family couldn't come close enough to pander to him, and now one of that old guy's waste of a son was crossing paths with himself. The original is a waste. Ning Chuan silently spat in his heart for I don't know how many times. By Qinghan Changtian personally leading Ning Chuan and the others, they entered the parlor inside the hall, and aside from the pretty maids standing on both sides, there were a few more people sitting on the guest seats. Qinghan Changtian brought Ning Chuan with him, and as soon as he entered, he yelled, "Gentlemen, look who I've invited here." In all honesty, Qinghan Changtian really just wanted to show off, and definitely didn't mean to insult Ning Chuan. Ever since he was a child, the third young master had basically grown up listening to the legends of Ning Chuan, and could be said to be his most loyal fanboy. However, after his words were spoken, those few people did not have the slightest reaction, and did not look up at all. This made Qinghan Changtian feel more or less embarrassed, and touching his nose, he turned his head with a light cough and said, "Huan Master Ning, I'll introduce you to them, they're all the experts who have come to help with the fist during this trip to the secret realm." Parlor sitting 4 people, Qinghan Changtian introduced one by one, when the first one wearing a Taoist robe, face without a long beard of the old man, is the top of the cloud state array everyone Oyezi, array tends to the realization of the realm, a cultivation has also stepped into the divine journey. Next to Oyezi, there was a green-clothed old man with white hair and beard, but his face was like a baby's, and he couldn't see any old age at all, and this person was the top Dan Dao everyone in Yunzhou, Xingting Jinran. 2 people are directly across from each other, the upper head of the 5 short stature, wearing a hemp clothes, chin with a circle of beard hair messy as a bird's nest, the origin is really not bad. This person's name is Mo Fei. The Yunzhou Mo family was also one of the top families tens of thousands of years ago, and specialized in organs, although by now the family has fallen, but no one knows how much of the heritage of the once top family has been passed down. In addition to these 3 people, the last person was dressed as a Jianghu Hulk, with a straw raincoat hat standing by his feet, a long knife with a sheath across his legs, and with a spreading color of viciousness between his eyebrows, he looked at Ning Chuan with a smile or a laugh. Demoiselle raincoat, bucket hat, plus as a cultivator but not away from the magic weapon long knife, this is the famous Demoiselle knife guest Hai Dalong in Yunzhou. Rumor has it that this person entered the way with martial arts, and from a reckless character who mingled in the mundane Jianghu, he hardened himself and hacked his way into the cultivation world with a big sword. After introducing the 4 in turn, Qinghan Changtian turned around and applied to speak solemnly, "This is the Qingshan Taoist Temple's Guan Master Ning. His old man's reputation has long since resounded throughout the entire Songyuan realm, so I don't need to introduce him more, do I? Ha!" As soon as Qinghan Changtian's words fell, Hai Daolong let out a soft laugh. The Songyuan realm's once invincible person the supreme figure of the true Goten tribulation realm. TSK, nowadays you're still a wasted man, I'm afraid you can't even connect me with a single slash. I can't imagine that the generation of heavenly pride that crowned the world is now reduced to this state, not even as good as the grandchildren of my clan. Brother Hai is overstating it. Next to him, Mo Fei moved in his chair, his toes just pointing to the ground, his voice rough, seeing that he's only in the late Tongming stage now, where is the might of the true Goten Havoc realm? Don't even mention a blade, he would have trouble withstanding even a single blade chi from Brother Hai, ha ha ha. With this amount of strength, you still want to share 50% of the secret realm's proceeds, what kind of spring and fall dream is that? Although the other 2 old men didn't open their mouths, they were also looking at Ning Chuan at the moment with faces full of deep meaning. In addition to verbal sarcasm, the 4 of them were releasing their divine journey realm pressure without any scruples, aiming to make Ning Chuan make a fool of himself on the spot. Benefits aside, an opportunity to humiliate the once invincible was at hand, and the morbid thrill of getting it was exciting to think about. Unfortunately, as soon as the four of them released their godly tour realm aura, it was blocked by an invisible barrier, and the irresistible aura was still surging back at the four of them like waves. Yan Qingxing's face had long been gloomy, and after taking a step out, he stood in front of Ning Chuan, his aura at the peak of the divine journey realm as deep and unfathomable as the abyssal vastness of the sea. Who are you? The four of them were like enemies. How could they not expect Ning Chuan to be followed by such a character? The secret exchanges between several people were not even noticed by Sikong Chantian, the proprietor, except for Ning Chuan. Master Ning Huan, he is? Although Sikong Chantian couldn't feel the aura of the dark exchange, he was not deaf or blind and spoke out to change the topic. I'm just a silent nobody. Before Ning Chuan could speak, Yan Qingxing spoke softly. On the way to the Nining Mountains, I happened to meet Master Senior Ning, just happened to be traveling with him. One and all of these losers who are still trying to climb, who don't even know if they'll be able to make it to the top in this life, actually dare to speak and insult Senior Ning, who once stood at the top of the mountain, laughable. Chapter 22 Top Family. The five people in the hall confronted each other, and sweat came down on Sikong Changtian's head. Ning Chuan had a cloudy look on his face, and hadn't even looked at those few people with a proper eye since he came in. These so-called experts who were strong enough to call the shots in Yunzhou were actually only in the Divine Tour realm, and were all ants until Jinwu. Jinwu hijacking realm, a heavy death hijacking, heavy as the heavenly philosopher, the gap between each weight is greater than the distance from the first realm of cultivation, treasure body to the peak of divine journey. The peak of divine journey was the apex of most geniuses, but for cultivation, only after penetrating the secret of Jinwu and passing the first death tribulation would one truly be able to communicate with heaven and earth and understand the meaning of the Tao. There is also the fact that in terms of the level of life, Jinwu and Jinwu below are not at all at the same level, so the entire Tsong Yuan realm has a situation where divine travel is common and Jinwu is not. Over time, each of these divine journey realm guys swelled up. Boo! Just as the swords were drawn in the hall, there was a loud bang from outside, as if some huge object had landed on the ground, and even the cave heavenly magic treasure trembled slightly. Third young master, eldest young master and the others have arrived. Lin Fu, who had been guarding the doorway, rushed at Sikong Chantian, and the latter's face instantly sank a bit, looking like he didn't have much goodwill towards his own elder and second brothers. However, Sikong Chantian still took a step towards the outside. With this interruption, Yan Qingxing and Hai Dalong and the others stopped their secret tit-for-tat, and Ning Chuan also turned around, following Sikong Chantian out. Outside the Sikong family's camp, there were two more majestic and domineering divine carriages. The left side of the divine carriage was pulled by 8 Kirin beasts with fiery flames lingering around their bodies and pointed horns on their heads. It was rumored that there was a trace of fire Kirin bloodline in this beast's body, which could travel tens of thousands of miles in a day, and when it became an adult, it even had the chance to break through to the divine journey realm. The other divine carriage was carried by a four-legged scaly dragon, with a divine traveling aura mixed with the hostile aura that belonged solely to ferocious beasts, causing the Qilin beasts next to it to subconsciously lean in. Tisk, is this the heritage of the three top families? Just pulling the divine carriage's foreign beast is a height that ordinary people can't reach even if they work hard for a lifetime. In that case, aren't we even worse than the mounts they keep? I'm sorry, but the reality of the situation is this. When the surrounding casual cultivators saw such scenes, they couldn't help but cry out in shock, and there were even quite a few youngsters who had just come out to practice with their faces darkened, and their moral heart was shaken. Trying to cultivate for a lifetime, even the inferiority of others pulling carts, this sense of disparity is a huge blow to the younger generation. Second brother, is your unicorn beast still weaned? Why don't you send it back for some rebuilding? On the back of the dragon, a divine light vanished to the top of its head, looking down at the 8 Qilin beasts at its feet, its voice almost resounding through the entire camp. This person was dressed in a purple robe with a majestic face. As he spoke, the auger dragon under his feet cooperated with a roar, and under the shroud of the dragon's roar, those 8 unicorn beasts behaved even more poorly. The Sikong clan's #1 contemporary, the eldest young master, Sikong Changfeng, showed up. Big brother, I swear, sooner or later, I'll kill that auger of yours as a dish of wine. The Qilin beast divine carriage emitted a halo. A man in his early 30s with a deep gaze stood in front of the halo with his hands behind his back, and the second oldest, Sikong Changlin, also appeared. Behind it there were faint sounds of singing and dancing, and in the blurred halo of light, one could faintly see the delicate postures of the nymphs and beauty queens, so it was clear that there was a different heaven in the divine carriage. Chang Tian has met big brother, second brother. Outside of the cave heavenly Dharma treasure, Sikong Changtian was expressionless as he arched his hand at the two of them. Let's go inside the hall first, it's always bad for outsiders to watch. The entire Yunzhou almost knew that the old family head of the Sikong family was nearing the end of his life and would soon be in turmoil. Rumor has it that the 3 young masters of the Sikong family have recently become more and more tit for tat, and the mother families behind each of them have also come down one after another, competing for power and profit, fighting in the dark. Just one layer of the shading cloth has not been pierced. In short, the 3 people for that position, the fight is inseparable, but the old family master wants to die before the next level, has been closed for a long time, did not come out, and no one can control them. Both of them didn't pay attention to Sikong Changtian, but walked down from the divine carriage on their own, and behind them, there were also more figures with thick breaths and different dresses. Some of these people, like Ning Chuan, were experts that had been specially invited for this trip to the secret realm, and there were also quite a number of people who were themselves Secong clan's envoys. Overlord Gun Immortal Lu Xiu, I can't believe he's here too. Look, the two sisters, Morong Shuet, the blood-clothed zither demon, and Morong Bing, the white-clothed fairy. You guys, look, that person beside the third young master of the Secong clan, isn't that the once invincible Ning Chuan? I'll be damned, it's really him. Didn't they say he was long-waisted? Who knows, it's only strange that we casual cultivators can be clear about the affairs of big shots. With so many experts, Divine Journey only managed to enter the first echelon. What are we going to take into the secret realm? What are you afraid of? Can the things that the big shots fight over be the same as ours? You can get rich picking up just about anything on the fringes. As one expert after another showed up behind the two young masters of the Secong family, the exclamations of those casual cultivators resounded again. Some people were clearly beating a retreat, while others had their own calculations. Ancient secret realm is an unattainable opportunity. No one knows the origin, the world only knows that the secret realm of countless treasures, can be lucky to get one of them will have the opportunity to turn the tables, so that the green clouds, the opportunity to get a glimpse of the true face of the avenue. In the long history of the Tsong Yuan realm, there were quite a few lucky people who had transformed into dragons in one go with the help of the ancient secret realm. Old Third, you're bringing just a few crooked people into the secret realm? Sikong Changfeng gathered the purple robe on his body. Beside him stood a young man with a long spear slung on his back. It was none other than the famous gun immortal Lu Xiu. Words can't be said so absolutely. Can't you see that Guan Master Ning has also come out of the mountain, that was once an invincible person? Ha! Sikong Changlin was smiling while the two beautiful women on his left and right, who looked almost identical, were draping his robes in the style of a worldly nobleman. These two women, one black and one white, in addition to the color of their clothes, even their hair buns were the same, and they were also twins, precisely the two Morong sisters who had become famous for a long time. After putting on Sikong Changlin's robe, the two sisters snuggled into his arms on the left and the right, looking at the envy in the eyes of quite a few casual cultivators. Ning Chuan stood beside Sikong Changtian and was not annoyed to see that the spearhead was pointed at him, and did not even look at those people more than once. This time, he was prepared to enter the mysterious realm solely for the Gung Jin Qi. Originally, he had planned to take it one step at a time, first grabbing a portion of the divine weapons, along with the 3 Earth-ranked divine weapons deposit given by Sikong Changfeng, and raising his cultivation to divine tour before saying anything else. But when he met Yen Xingxing halfway, Ning Chuan became even more fearless. This trip to the secret realm had become nothing more than a material field for Ning Chuan to enhance his own strength.